Good afternoon. Today is November 27th, 2023, and this Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Griffin.
Here.
McCormick.
Present.
Bishop. Caldwell. Hairston. Casey.
Present.
Valencia. Santana.
Present.
Spencer.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have order.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead with ordinance number 800-2023 by Councilmembers Hairston and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend section 337.031 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended by ordinance number 582-18, passed July 18th, 2018, relating to townhouse RA districts. Madam Director.
Thank you to the chair. Thank you to the committee. First of all, happy holidays. Hope it was a good one. Yes, so we are before you with the update to the Townhouse Code. As you may be aware, in 2018, we adopted a new Townhouse Code to streamline and simplify the design guidelines for the townhouse building. Shannon will go into that in more detail. We are here to say that we believe in these updates. We have vetted each of the changes through the Planning Commission, through various city departments, through community members, and we believe this is the balanced approach that will result in the designs that we're seeking, as well as the right types of products developmentally. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon to give the presentation and speak more in detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President, and I apologize to the members that saw this last week, so I'll try to quickly go through it. But initially, so this, as you may remember, there was quite a bit of citizen feedback across the board on the variety of townhouse projects that we were seeing being developed throughout the city. And so part of the balancing act that we have when we write zoning code isn't just for certain neighborhoods, but for all across the city. So we have to balance not only the public health, safety, comfort, and general welfare, we also have to balance private property rights. We want safe and walkable neighborhoods, but we also want predictability and clarity. We want transparency in our regulations, but we also want efficiency and customer service. We greatly care about what the community wants and needs. We want a safe and walkable neighborhoods. But we also want context-responsive compatibility while at the same time being able to produce a variety of miscible housing typologies. So throughout the process in the last several years, so there was an update in 2018 that changed how Townhouse Code was written. Initially, we had actual mapped locations. This code update allowed for townhouses to go in any zoning district, but if you're in a single-family or two-family district, you needed a conditional use from City Planning Commission. And so we really needed to clarify that process and definitions based on user feedback. We needed to maintain current language regarding complementary or block sensitive. There were comments around landscaping requirements and wanted us to add back outdoor amenity space. We wanted to address townhouses fronting alleys when appropriate or within 100 feet. And then add minimum lot areas and minimum lot sizes were some of the comments. Public comments also asked for human-scaled materials to apply also to facades and auto courts or motor courts. There were comments around differentiating pavers for motor courts so that you could tell the difference between pedestrian versus vehicle. They wanted motor courts that were snow-friendly or that there was places for snow to go or trash receptacles to go. They wanted us to continue to use the word scale, complementary, compatible. And then we also needed to balance regulations for context-sensitive projects while also allowing for new and flexible different types of design approaches, styles, et cetera. And then we also received a variety of letters from different organizations across the city and state, including AIA Cleveland, in support of the new Townhouse Code changes. As it relates to who did we speak to and when or how, we had developers and architects review the new proposed changes. We talked to block clubs, we had council review, we had internal staff review across the entire developmental cluster, fire official review, chief building official review, our chief zoning administrator and building and housing reviewed it, the landmark staff reviewed it, and then various organizations across the state reviewed the draft. And then we also reviewed best practices of other similar cities as it relates to some of the concerns, and then obviously we had a legal review. And so what are the goals of the update? We wanted to consider and process the public comment. We wanted to clarify the process and definitions based on user feedback. We wanted to refine the conditional use in a single and two-family provision, new definitions and regulations for motor courts, and then address interior frontages, especially for interior lots on residential streets. And so this is just a kind of a infographic, basically telling what the townhouse application process is, and basically how that can be applied through building and housing or through planning, and then how we give it a rating of RA1, RA2, or RA3 in the ordinance, and then that affects what regulations are applied. And so what that really looks like is how do we determine how dense a project is, whether it's an RA1, RA2, or RA3, RA3 being the densest. On a residential street that is full, we take the average within 100 feet in both directions and take the average of that, and then that gives us the average setback, and then we apply the RA1, RA2, or RA3. Now, if it's on a corner lot, we use properties across the street or on the adjacent corner, similar to what we currently do for setbacks. And so what happens is when an application comes in, we see, okay, this is the address, this is the location, we do the mathematical calculation, and then if the setback falls somewhere between 0 and 12 feet, we give it a designation of RA3, which is the densest, and if the setbacks fall somewhere between 10 and 20, we give it RA1 or RA2. We also clarified the language in the code, so this is kind of tedious, so I'll go through it, but the green basically is where you see text that was added to the regulations, and this was at the behest of the community and several organizations. So we changed the purpose statement to state townhouse projects, and we defined that, and then we also made sure that we included some of these terms around architectural design. The provisions and standards of this section are intended to accommodate a variety of innovative housing typologies for infill development and to ensure compatibility of such units. And then the red is strikeouts. Those are what was taken out of the legislation. The definitions in the zoning code, so just a real quick, there was a lot of conversation from various community members that zoning code definitions should match building code definitions. And we spoke with the law department and our chief zoning official in building and housing, and we both found from both of those that definitions in the zoning code are not required to, should not be the same as the definitions in the Ohio Building Code. And that's really because they are context specific. And the Cleveland, Ohio Building Code draws from the International Building Code. Zoning code definitions are context-based to meet a purpose and are not general. And the zoning code definitions call out in any chapter or for a specific context related to townhouse project development or some type of overlay district. For instance, the word institution in our pedestrian retail overlay districts refers to things like daycares and churches, et cetera. And then specific definitions take precedence over general definitions. So as we go through the definitions in this section of the code, we've added some language around townhouse projects. And so that's any combination of single-family detached dwelling units, townhouse units, or townhouse buildings submitted to the city as a unified development proposal. When there is single-family detached dwelling units as part of a townhouse project proposal, and they are located adjacent and fronting to the public right-of-way, they must be contiguous with other units, and that any type of single-family detached units may not exceed 1/3 of the total unit count for the product in the order to be reviewed under a townhouse code regulations. And then we changed the word principal street frontage to primary street frontage, and that's just in line with best practice. Architects and developers all prefer that, as well as it matches the new form-based code that you guys will see later this month. And so what does that really mean in terms of primary street frontage? In this case, this townhouse project fronts West 48th Street, and that first unit is on the primary frontage. The other thing as it relates to townhouse project, what we're saying here is if there's a townhouse project that comes before us for 4 townhomes and 1 single-family unit, one of those units can still be adjudicated as a townhouse because it looks exactly like it, and it's generally added either just as another option or just to make a project work in some cases. And so what does that look like in this case? These are townhome units that were proposed behind the first row of townhomes, and there's 1 detached single-family unit that is being adjudicated in the same way as the townhouse project. It looks just like the rest of the units in this development. The Planning Commission asked us to address motor courts, and originally, a lot of people was interchangeable with auto court, but motor is already defined in our code, so we're sticking with motor court. And that's really an internal private road for a townhouse project, allowing vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle access from the public right-of-way to private garages. The court regulations in 357 do not apply to townhouse projects, as those relate more so to courts with in the interior of apartments and those are things, plazas and such. Alley is already defined, and then a private road means a privately owned or controlled and maintained drive, street, road, or lane that provides the primary means of vehicular ingress or egress to where two or more lots or dwelling units share a common access drive, even if such lots has a required frontage on a public road. And adding these definitions helps in terms of the adjudication and understanding of how projects have to be developed. The other definitions we added were private walkway. So a principal pedestrian entrance is exterior door exclusive to the dwelling unit that offers a pedestrian the most visible and direct means of ingress into a public right-of-way or private walkway. Private walkway is any sidewalk or passageway located on a privately owned property. Planning Commission wanted us to add Muse unit, so that's any townhouse unit on an interior frontage and whose principal pedestrian entrance is located opposite of a motor court fronting a private walkway at the side lot line. And that's really to address those interior units. And then we also have added the term transition, which we borrowed from the form-based code. It's an additional setback, a buffer requirement, and reduced height allowance when certain districts abut specifically defined districts with a lower height intensity or more restrictive use. So one of the major things was define and to clearly explain and clarify how does the use of a townhouse project work in a single or two-family district, and that's they're permitted by a conditional use. City Planning Commission will determine whether the proposal meets all applicable site planning and architectural design standards established in this code to ensure proper design and compatibility with existing uses, and then all townhouses will go through either housing or local design review. So 5 units or less will go through internal housing design review, and anything over 5 units will go through city planning or landmarks respectively. And then every project within a single family or two family district that requires a conditional use will go to city planning. And so how does Planning Commission make the determination whether this is an appropriate special use in a single or two family district? They will use these 4 categories to determine if use meets the criteria for conditional use as it relates around compatibility, site layout, building features, circulation, and parking. And so what does that mean? Site planning and design should meet height, front yard setbacks. So even if it's modern development, it fits within the existing height and setbacks of the district. They'll also look at the relative height and massing and surrounding context in the general neighborhood. This is just an example of how any type of modern development would fit in with existing development. And then they also look at roof forms and frontage features. And those frontage features include things like porches, patios, things of that nature, terraces or light wells, forecourts or stoops. And then they also look at the circulation and parking. How are people getting around in vehicles, but also as pedestrians? And then are they located near any type of frequent transit options? One of the biggest things that we reviewed as it relates to public feedback was to address Muse units, or these interior pedestrian frontages on interior side lot lines. So for example, in this image here, you have front doors facing somebody's interior lot line, generally their backyard. And one of the reasons that this was implemented was to allow for more pedestrian thoroughfares to make more connections across blocks. But as time went on, obviously there was a fear of crime and things of that nature. But there is places where this can be cited appropriately. And so we had to really balance whether to completely get rid of these types of units, or is there maybe a time and a place in various parts of the city that it would make sense? And if so, how does it make sense? And so what we did was we revised the standards so that where this type of situation exists, it would be an appropriately cited place. And so I'll walk through the standards that are being changed directly here, but one statement that we got from the public a lot was that you should have minimum lot sizes. And I just want to bring to attention that parcels across the city of Cleveland in single-family districts, 33% of all parcels are substandard as is. And in two-family districts, 84% of our parcels are substandard. So they're automatically, if you're rebuilding a home, you're going for some type of area variance if needed. So there was no reason to add minimum lot standards for this particular regulation because most lots already are substandard as is. But what we did do is we revised the setbacks to ensure that that we were getting the proper designs in townhouse projects across the city. And so what we did here along the front yard depths was required a greater setback across the board. So whether you're in the least dense district or the most dense district, you're going to need at least 10 feet setback off the property line to have an interior frontage or a muse unit frontage. We also have upped the interior side yard depth for projects to at least a minimum of 3 feet from 0 feet in the densest of districts. And then also for rear yard depth, we've also added a 3-foot requirement. And that was at the request of the community as well as the fire department. And then as it relates to the building design feature, throughout this code, we've added the muse unit option and then added entrances. So if there is any muse unit that is more than 150 feet from a street line, it requires basically a man door, a pedestrian entrance into the motor court. And then we also required private open space. And so essentially this is ground story open space required at least 100 feet or 150 square feet for new townhouse units. And then we also implemented the transition. And what this says is basically if you are in a height district that is lower than the adjoining district. So let's say you're in a local retail B2 district of 60 feet height and you're sitting next to a two-family residential 35-foot height district. That means you have to be, your rear building line has to be at least 10 feet off the property line at the ground story, and then anything over 2.5 or 2 stories or 24 feet has to be set back an additional 10 feet. And what that requires is this transition so that townhome units are not overpowering or seemingly over encroaching into single or two-family residential. The other thing that we addressed here is the garages, car openings, driveways, and motor courts. And so requiring motor court landscaping of 25 square feet. And then also the motor court parking, differentiating the difference between what is pedestrian and what is vehicular. And then you can see it here in some of these examples of using those types of variation in pavers to do so. And so what does that landscaping look like inside a motor court? Essentially, let's say you have 16-foot garage doors visible, 7 of them visible from the public right-of-way. That makes 112 linear feet of garage door visible. And then to divide that by 32, so essentially you need 100 square feet of landscaping in the motor court. You're not limited to that. You could do way more, but that is we're saying we're setting a minimum here. And so this is just an example of some of the townhome units that as it relates to muse units. And then we also wanted to clarify procedures. And so we are removing this image. This has caused a lot of headache and confusion, not only for the community, developers, and architects, but also city staff. And then we also clarified the procedures and appeals of the application. And this really speaks to the actions of the conditional use, meaning that if for townhouse projects located in any zoning district where townhouse use is not permitted by right, i.e. a single-family or two-family district, City Planning Commission must review it based on the criteria in Division E. But it also states here that the City Planning Commission shall take action on the application at a public meeting subsequent to providing public notice. The commission may require modifications to the proposed as condition of approval. So a lot of people in the community wanted to be notified, and so we're requiring here in the regulations that we will notify them through a public notice, whether that's online on our website. But what we're also going to do is place a conditional use placard and give it to the property owner or the developer to place at the site of the townhouse project so that neighbors will know that there's a planning commission hearing coming up. They can speak on it, they can scan it, and get all the information and the site plans and everything, similar to how the BZA notices have been working as of late. And so with that, those are all of the main updates. I think we addressed all of the concerns of the community as well as the Planning Commission. I believe that as it relates to the public comments, we will not be able to always address certain comments all the time, but we can try to find a happy medium and compromise. And I think that these regulations that we propose here not only address those concerns of those interior frontages, but also will produce better quality and outcomes as it relates to our townhouse regulations. Thank you.
I'll just add that, Shannon has done an incredible amount of work. This has been 2 years in the making to improve the zoning code through development meetings, research, and reflection. And I believe Shannon has really put a lot of effort into this. The Planning Commission did vote on this back in March, and so they have stamped their approval, and we've addressed all of their concerns. I also do want to add that this is a great example of an improvement upon the zoning code. We know that zoning codes must evolve as our times evolve, and so this is just an example of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just a couple of questions. I know you had significant community input, but there was one specific group. Have they had any meetings with you, with Mr. Ellison and I know Ms. Washington and that entire group?
To the council president, yes. We met in person with Faye Harris and Mr. Ellison, as well as the Ohio City Block Club, their economic wing of their organization as well. And then I also had a series of phone calls and emails exchanged with Mr. Ellison as these regulations evolved.
Were any of their recommendations accepted or added to the ordinance? Because I know they gave us an extensive packet as early as 2 or 3 years ago,
Yes.
and I just didn't know if any of that was actually implemented.
Yes, sir. So we did address some of their comments. Everything that they asked for, we had to weigh what's best practice and consider the entire city, not just their neighborhoods, when making those. And so as it relates to those interior frontages or those interior lots, on interior lots, we did seriously have conversations around, do we want to allow this condition? And we worked with city planning, the commission members themselves, during special presentations as it relates around those types of units. And they really strongly encouraged us to address landscaping as well as pedestrian entrances in the auto court, and then looking at the setbacks. So requiring those 10-foot setbacks will significantly reduce the inappropriate lots where the most consternation around those types of projects occur. And so this has already played out in terms of projects that have come before planning staff or other various departments in terms of assuring that there's real focus on proper site planning and following those setbacks where those entrances are the most appropriate. So there can be projects that are done very well with interior frontages as long as they have the appropriate site.
Okay. And remind me what an inappropriate lot is.
Probably a lot that is too narrow.
So most lots are 120 by 80.
A standard lot is 4,800 square feet, but most are run in the 3,200 range or less.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then last but not least, this was heard in DPS?
That's
right?
correct, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Hairston reached out to me. He's not able to be here today, but just wanted to reflect the fact that this was heard and discussed at length within the DPS committee, supported through the committee process to move along to here to finance. And once again, there was a very robust conversation, including myself, around some of the important questions that we've all heard in the community around this legislation. But overall, Chair, there was support out of the DPS committee. And Councilman Hairston wanted me to pass that along. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions regarding ordinance number 800-2023? Councilman Palencic?
And my honorable colleagues, are there any changes to, with regard to townhouses, regarding garages, rear or front-load garages?
Through the council president to the councilman, yeah, so the front-loaded garages were taken out during the first rendition of the Townhouse Code in 2018. And so what this is saying is requiring landscaping if there's going to be motor courts, as well as requiring greater setbacks for those units on the interior frontages or in the motor courts themselves.
So the motor court, Mr. Chairman, to my colleagues and to the presenter, the motor court would be in the rear, correct?
In some cases, yes.
Okay. But in most cases, they would be in the rear if you're going to have a motor court, correct?
In the rear or the side.
Yeah. So does this eliminate front-load garages?
Front-load garages have already been eliminated,
Period.
across the city for all projects.
So if someone wants to install in a townhouse a front-load garage, they would need a variance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Councilwoman Spencer?
Thanks, Council President. I was able to participate in the presentation last week at DP&S committee, but really wanted to point out one significant change that I think will be welcomed by residents is the public notification process as it relates to conditional use in single and two-family districts. We had a really interesting discussion about signage going up in front of properties that are seeking conditional use approval by Planning Commission. So one challenge has been that the public hasn't been able to understand that process very readily. So I really appreciate the attentiveness to that in this change. And then even though we did discuss it last Tuesday, I had one more question through our chair to the director or to Ms. Leonard. The piece about the green space, just to clarify, is it, we had a bit of a discussion last week about kind of private green space that would be unique to each unit or each parcel as opposed to passive or shared landscaping. Wanted to make sure I understood that piece of it accurately.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman. Yeah, so it requires, in the RA1 and RA2 districts, it does require 100 or 150 square feet of ground story open space per unit. So that would be some type of, whether that's a patio or porch or terrace. It's defined in the code. It's a little asterisk under section G, I think. But it does require some private open space for those RA1 and RA2 districts at the ground story.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right. Is there any more questions for ordinance number 800-2023? Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 800-2023 stands approved.
Thank you.
And Director, I believe you have ordinance number 1200-2023.
That's correct. We have a presentation as well.
Okay. Ordinance number 1200-2023, as amended by Council Members Hairston and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of City Planning to employ one or more professional consultants to provide on-call planning services for a period of 1 year with 3 one-year options to renew, exercisable by the Director of City Planning. And this has a couple of amendments. It says there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In the title, strike lines 6 and 7 in their entirety and insert options exercisable with additional legislative authority. In number 2, section 1, lines 7 and 8, strike exercisable by the Director of City Planning and insert exercisable with additional legislative authority. In section 3, line 1, after shall, insert not exceed 200,000 and shall. Those are the amendments made, and they were made by Stephen Martinek on 11/21/23. Director?
Yes, thank you to the chair. I have with me Matt Moss, the manager of strategic initiatives, who will be presenting in more detail. But to share with you all, the goal of this on-call professional services contract is to augment the existing planning department staff capacity. And I wrote in the RFP, this is my corny line, which is to move dreams into plans and to move plans into reality. And so this is a tool that we believe will allow us to be much more nimble and proactive. So many of our staff are right now great administrators. We review, design review, development plans, and that's a very reactive stance. And we really want to be proactive to say, in partnership with you all as council members, we want to look at those ambitions and goals and plan truly for the future. I think that the on-call planning services is going to take some of those broad neighborhood plans we have seen come through and be able to take much more strategic bites to say, all right, what is the next step that this neighborhood needs? Maybe it's a small area plan to really focus in on several parcels that need transformation. Maybe it's transportation gap planning to get it to the next stage of design before it moves on to capital projects. I think where we have a gap is that we often see a lot of plans, and then there's the implementation period, and we want to be able to cross over into implementation as nimbly and as strategically as we can. I will say that there are going to be many examples that Matt shows where plans, small area plans, have actually resulted in key results. So, for example, the West 25th Street Intro project started because there was a small area plan done at that intersection with the existing strip mall, and that vision actually carried through to a transformation of that to that corner with a transit-oriented development. And so things like that set up our neighborhoods for the type of growth and policies and design that we do want to see. So with that, I will turn it over to Matt to walk through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, Council President, committee members. I have some slides I'll share. I'll be really brief. Happy to answer any questions you may have afterwards. So again, just to restate what the Director shared with you, what the purpose and goal of this legislation and contract is to fill those gaps that we have in plans going from planning to implementation. I'll share a few examples of what that looks like. So we went through this contract process and want to proceed moving forward with a team from Stantec along with some local sub-consultants. And some examples that they shared in their presentation, and ultimately one reason why we ended up selecting them is just the scope and breadth of work that they provide as written in our request for qualifications across neighborhood planning, transportation planning, best practices, grant writing, all of those things. And so they have extensive experience in developing small area plans, many of which you're familiar with on council. You've worked with these in your wards. As well as multimodal transportation examples. This includes gaps in our transportation network where we might have a capital project either planned or underway, and the need to address an intersection or specific segment of street with some type of treatment. What we're proposing to do with this service is work with plans or gaps that have been identified through a planning process to get real implementable changes to that roadway that can then be priced through other city processes like other requirement contracts that we have through public works or capital projects, for example. In order to do that, they often need a design in order to bid that work out. And that's where we're sort of stuck in many of the recommendations we find in our small area plans, and this will rectify that. An example of that here is in the Old Brooklyn neighborhood. Western Reserve Land Conservancy and the Metro Parks developed Brighton Park on an old landfill and go-kart track. It's now a park and community amenity space. We have an existing city park called Harmony Park, which also connects via a trail on Treadway down to the towpath trail. We want to use these new designations in Cleveland called neighborhood greenways, using local, low-speed, low-volume streets to provide low-stress connections for bicycles and pedestrians to these recreational facilities. However, sometimes there are gaps, like you see here on Valley Road between West 20th and Creston. This is an offset intersection, and so it's a challenge if you're looking for a low-stress off-road bike connection to make this journey. While Creston and West 20th are low-volume, low-speed streets, they're comfortable to ride a bike or walk on. Valley is a high-speed road. It connects down to Jennings, and there are a lot of vehicles that drive on that street. And so this would help us close that gap by giving us a design that we can then price out and implement. This is a process by which we've developed this plan with the community, and want to implement this. However, the existing pathways to do that are already sort of full of projects. They're projects that originate in public works, they originate in capital projects. And so in order for us to do that, we need just this gap resource to come up with a design, again, that can be priced and then implemented by the city, or perhaps in a capital project that's underway or currently being planned. Here's another example. This is over on Waterloo, East 156. We get recommendations like this from working with CDCs, working with residents who want to calm and reduce travel lanes, crossing distances in neighborhoods. This is one suggestion, using paint and striping. There's another suggestion that just, again, these are just suggestions. This is not something we're not necessarily going to implement by presenting it to you here today, but we get these recommendations and we want to evaluate them feasibly, and this would extend our ability to do so in a quick, in an expeditious and serious manner. Another example here, this is a project that actually I've been working on for a while now over on West 41st Street. West 41st is a one-way pair with 44th over in Ohio City in Councilman McCormick's ward. We've gotten a lot of requests from neighbors on the street, for example, to look at multimodal transportation options, including separated bike facilities. This is a street, again, where there are neighbors who are like, we have enough parking, we really want to see this roadway space repurposed for other modes. Again, in order to do that, there are complications involved in addressing the intersections, the signal timing, do we need new signals, that kind of thing. And this contract would allow us to take work like this, actually get it priced out, and then effectively plan it with our partners, like I said, in capital projects and public works for implementation. The team we selected also has a great deal of experience in coming up with a lot of the graphic materials that we need in order to communicate these types of things to residents and other stakeholders. We want to make sure that we're doing a good job in providing this in a way that is generally practiced across the country, but also relevant and responsive to the residents who live here in Cleveland's neighborhoods. You just heard from Shannon too. We're doing a lot of zoning work, townhouse code, form-based code. We have a desire to implement that and expand those options. It takes a long time to plan that, as you might be aware. And so in order to do that, this team will also help us with coming up with the graphic collaterals to, for example, display what the code allows you to build by right, so we can provide that greater level of detail and understanding to residents. Also, we have residential design guidelines. The last time these were updated was sometime in the 90s. Again, the values and goals in our guidelines are still applicable and effective today. This would help us, again, a very quick and expeditious way, get those materials up to date for our current decade and make them more accessible to people rather than having to come in, get a hard copy from City Hall, or access a PDF that's a little difficult to read. Again, even at this distance, it's hard to tell what these words even say. And so we want to update these materials, and having an on-call contract to do that, because we want that specific task done quickly and effectively, it makes sense in terms of executing that through this process. The team also provide us an extensive experience and background in pursuing federal funding opportunities. We're working cross-departmentally very extensively, again, with capital projects and other departments in the city to look at just the breadth and scope of funding opportunities available, also with outside partners, the Metro Parks, NOACA, other communities in our region. And having this team provide us their expertise in terms of writing these grants, what works well, what organizations like DOT and others are looking for in terms of their applications would help us more effectively pursue and obtain those dollars for the city of Cleveland. I have some slides here showing the extensive team. These are the project leads from Stantec. We also, one of the local subs is Seventh Hill in terms of engagement. I just wanted to note and point out from Seventh Hill that one reason why we ended up selecting this team is because he pulls from an extensive network of residents in the community to help with engagement, fact-finding, experience finding, that kind of thing, when doing planning projects, and we wanted to make sure we were tapping into that moving forward. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
If I may tag on. So we're really excited about this because this will give us a lot more resource to address many different types of planning projects. I think what's really powerful about this process is that we can create task orders that can be completed in as soon as 2 weeks to 6 months to 1 year, whatever is needed. And rather than putting out RFPs for every small process or small project, this allows us to get that feedback really quickly and the work product back really quickly. The other thing I'll add is that the on-call community engagements consultant is going to be really helpful for us as we think about planning to extend our own staff capacity. We only have 5 neighborhood planners who are quite limited in their time and what they do administratively, and so this will help to augment any community engagement and communications. I think finally, this is a best practice. Many communities do these types of on-call professional services, including some of our suburban peers in Northeast Ohio. And then also MOCAP and Port Control also have these types of on-call practices, which again is much more nimble, allows us to get the work products we need done in a discrete, short timeline. Thank you.
Thank you. And this contract is for $200,000, right?
That is correct.
And it has not gone, it has gone out to bid and it's come back here for approval.
That's correct. We have gone through an extensive RFP process. We received, I think, 16 or 17 different responses, which was phenomenal. We interviewed 5 different firms and selected Stantec as the one for the $200,000 contract.
And I see that you have diversity in their engagement team, so I always want to make sure that we see that. The question always comes up when we get these kind of contracts, why can't you just hire the staff? And in my estimation, that's enough to probably hire about 3 good quality staff that you could just have on your team and operate it in-house.
It's a great question. So I do think that 200 doesn't stretch as far as we think when it comes to staff. To hire a really good architect or engineer or graphic designer, including the benefits that need to come along with their salary, you could probably get 1.5. And so I think that we've struggled to really hire enough of the design professionals that we would like to have on staff. I think the other thing is that because Stantec is an international global firm, we can actually reach their expertise in a way where, one day we need graphic design, another day we need engineers, another day we need policy research. And so being able to have that multifunctional expertise on hand is really flexible. And we want to be very strategic about the types of personnel we do hire to make sure that we're really hiring for the types of work that we need done on the ground here.
Well, that actually opens up something different around equity, is that, if you're saying this is kind of like your high-powered consultant, then how do you pick and choose where you apply them compared to where you apply your staff to?
It's a great question as well. So, again, this is a lot of the types of I think our staff will be much more on the ground, and they know the neighborhoods, they know you all, and this is to sort of support their work. So this is extending their capacity in order to get where we need to go. And some of the items we've discussed, like graphic communication, like engineering, they will be relying on what we need, and those are going to be tasks that we create for them to complete.
And Director, I know you're all about equity and everything, so I definitely think you would probably deploy your resources in a fair and equitable way. But I will say that, it would be very disturbing to the council and to the public if all of the nice, shiny projects this consultant gets deployed to, and then a project in some of the neighborhoods that are more distressed, we leave a staff person to say we're dealing with that.
I see what you're saying,
Yeah,
yes.
how do we make sure that we have equitable deployment? And I know you're all about equity, but I think that we need to just have some guardrails to make sure that we are all about that.
That's an excellent point, Chair. So thank you for fleshing that out. And we do have our eye on many projects all across the city. And so there are going to be opportunities to partner with you all to see where those gaps are. I have some projects in mind, both East Side and West Side. And so I think it'll be critical for us to sit down and talk about that. We have a list of potential projects, and we can look at the criteria in terms of timeline, urgency, and such. So thank you.
Well, you know how much it costs. Oh, do you have something you wanted to add?
If I
Sure.
may, just briefly, because I think it would help answer your question as well, is 2 things I wanted to point out is that even though we have a great group of neighborhood planners, many of their planning areas in some ways are comparable in size to, and many of them are comparable in size to some of the surrounding communities we have outside of Cleveland. So they're dedicated to those areas, but they're planning for quite a large area. And so this will truly augment their ability to plan and then actually move those plans towards implementation. And then I think subsequently, too, we'd be happy to come back, especially as this is a resource we plan on using quickly and effectively. And so be more than happy, especially when we come back for renewal, to prepare a really detailed analysis of where we deployed those resources and what projects were advanced.
Okay, I just have confidence in the director that if you gave her 2 more bodies, or 3 more bodies, that she would know what to do with them. And if you ask me to put a consultant on or a permanent staff on, then give me the bodies. But I understand the director feels this makes her nimble and gives her a little bit more flexibility, so I'll leave it at that. I have a couple of questions, and I know I have Councilman Casey and Councilman Polinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just to reiterate the topic that you had, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I don't disagree that the work needs to be done. Totally 100% on board with that. It's the way that you're asking for it to be done. This is $200,000 for a consultant, and in the transfer order that's being introduced tonight, your department is taking $360,000 out of personnel and transferring, I've got the legislation here, $360,000 out of personnel and related expenses and transferring it into other expenses for city planning.
Is this for ordinance 1200?
No.
1362. So
Which is the transfer ordinance.
This is that's for a separate
that's
item.
that's for something else. But now we're looking at $500 and some $1,000, $360,000 in unspent dollars, and now we've got $200,000 going out for consultants. And I, Mr. Chairman, to the director, am in line with the council president, and we're outsourcing city work is what we're doing when we should be hiring individuals who have the ability and are capable of doing this work. And I think this is just coming to a boil because we're seeing this a little bit too much probably across the board, and you just happen to be sitting at the table right now when it's needs to be talked about, right? I mean, we're a city government. We're not a consulting. We're in the job of providing city services and moving the city forward. And I understand that not everything can be done with employees, but now we're getting to a point where, we're taking $200,000, we're hiring a firm to do what we could hire somebody to do, maybe not as quickly by the time we onboard them, but that's a whole nother topic. But the idea, Mr. Chairman, of all these consultants to come in to offset city work, and I'm not saying it doesn't need to be done, but maybe we need to start looking at a different way of trying to get this work done as opposed to outsourcing it.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond to the councilman through the chair. So this particular ordinance, which is 1200, is actually all below the line items. So these are all below the line. These are not personnel dollars. To be specific, we did pull some funds from Vision Zero to handle some of the safety study, transportation studies, and we're pulling from other contractual, as well as an unused local match fund that we did not receive. So we had applied for Reconnecting Communities. We were willing to put forward the local match. We did not receive that grant, and so now we were seeking to integrate that into this contract. To your point, I agree that personnel could be, all of us could use more personnel. But I think to have one person that can cover engineering, graphic design, policy research, et cetera, all in one body would be very difficult to find. And so again, this is trying to augment our current personnel to say, hey, these are opportunities to take chunks of projects, tasks that can be completed as little as 2 weeks to 6 months to help our planners get to the next step. And so hopefully I'm addressing some of those concerns. We need to have both in order to do some of the proactive work that we need to do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, you're budgeted for 23, I think, individuals in your department. Are you fully staffed?
We are budgeted for 30 across 4 boards and commissions. We are fully staffed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Casey. Councilman Polinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues. And I would follow up on your questions and comments along with Councilman Casey. What's concerning me is I'm looking across the board, and Council President indicated that the transfer ordinance is for first reading, so we'll be getting into that at some point. But we know we don't have enough health inspectors. We know we don't have enough building and housing inspectors. We're hearing now that we don't have enough people in city planning to do the internal work. And Mr. Chairman and my honorable colleagues, I'm concerned that we're starting to see administration by consultant. And that concerns me greatly. And I'm seeing that across the board. We saw it with police as it pertains to recruitment, where we look at other cities, they're using their own people to recruit for police rather than using consultants. And I'm just concerned that that we used to put an emphasis on being able to do things in-house. And now it seems like we're putting an emphasis on doing things in the outhouse. And that, I'm really worried about where we're going. So I have these concerns.
Through the chair to the councilman, from Chicago to Solon,
Okay.
everybody has this contract. And so I think that this is a best practice that many communities use, again, in order to augment their staff for smaller projects where we may not need a full-time staff to do that one thing all the time. And so it is much more nimble than putting out an RFP every time for a small project that we may have used consultants for anyway. And if we do want to free up more staff, then we need to reduce the amount of administration that we do, because there's a lot. And our staff are constantly working to the brim to get even just the work done, let alone be proactive. And so this will help augment us to do that.
So when the line of questioning Councilman Casey embarked upon, you indicated that you have no vacancies at this point, correct? And you're telling us at this table, with the 30 staff members you've just alluded to, that you're unable to do planning projects across the city.
That's correct. And I will just reiterate through the chair that this is a practice that every city, most major cities, as well as our suburban communities, have contracts like this on hand to augment the work of our staff.
And to the director, I might understand it because most suburbs are not as big as a ward in the city of Cleveland. So I can understand a suburban community contracting out for work. But you know, we used to be able to do stuff in-house. That's what I don't understand. What has transpired here in this city that we can't do things in-house anymore? We're unable to do it. I've got to believe you have competent people working in city planning. And so, I mean, are there that many projects that you're working on? I mean, I'd like to see a list of the projects you're working on. I mean, I'd like to see that list of projects that you're working on where 30 people are pinned down where we can't do it. And we need to have outside consultants come in. I mean, I'd like to see what planning projects you're doing in Glenville and Collinwood. I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
That's just me personally speaking.
Sure.
But I'm looking across the city, and Mr. Chairman, I'll make that official request through you, through staff. Our staff, I'd like to see that list of projects that you're working on, that 30 people are tied down. And I want to just end it with this. Director, you indicated you're bogged down with administration. I'm not, what does that mean? Explain that to me, what that means. Every director, every department has administrative responsibilities to do. Is there something that has been imposed on you or placed in your shop that makes your ability to address neighborhood concerns difficult? I mean, I'm not clear what that means.
Through the chair, so to be clear, we have 30 people for 4 boards and commissions. So let me just table set in terms of the number of people. We have 2 people for Board of Zoning Appeals, 2 people for Board of Building Standards, 3 people for landmarks, and then 23 staff for planning, of which 5 are neighborhood planners, 3 are zoning, 2 are strategic initiatives, and then there's a variety of other sort of support staff and specialized planners, project coordinators. And so with 5 neighborhood planners that cover the whole city, much of what they do right now is review projects that come to us that are proposed by developers for design review. And a lot of that, now that we have, development, probably more development than prior years, a lot of that time is spent reviewing those projects. And again, those are proposals to the city. And so we would love to have more time to do more proactive work, and this is one tool in order to do that, along with taking a hard look at our processes to make sure that it is less administratively burdensome and to be able to free up our staff to do much more of that proactive work.
But how many people could be working on landmark cases? I mean, you said three. You think you said three landmark.
Through the chair.
How many properties are we landmarking? I mean,
There are 8,000 parcels that are landmarked. And
Yes.
They review over 500 permits a year, as well as hundreds of design review cases. So, I'm happy to go into more operations offline. I do believe we covered a lot of the operational issues over in DPNS, and I'm happy to work one-on-one with you, Councilman. But I do believe that, again, this is a best practice practiced by many cities from Chicago to Solon.
so
Thank you.
by the council enacting this legislation, Mr. Chairman, I'll wrap it up. This legislation, could we expect to see? What more could we see?
Yeah. To the councilman through the chair, and I believe I could provide some information for the first part. That question, also the first part of the question you asked earlier, to much of especially the long-term transportation planning that planners generally participate in is typically in terms of helping in planning our capital improvement process. And so our capital plan, the projects within the capital plan, and those projects are multiple year long projects. They're scoped, they're planned. Part of what if you recall, the Clean Green Streets process improvements that were first initiated in part by this council and by the mayor was about that process, and that's a multi-year long process. One thing we're hoping and we expect to achieve with this resource is we get many requests from community partners, CDCs, residents, council people to assist with making changes now to our transportation network, to our neighborhoods, to the roadways. And it's difficult to do that outside of that capital improvement process because it requires bonding, it requires financial planning, it requires community engagement, and typically we do long multi-mile corridors through that process. And so this would be a tool that would equip us to respond to those things directly because we interface so oftentimes more directly with the community than departments that do that long-term capital planning. And so another aspect would be, like the director alluded to, oftentimes, especially when conducting or completing a neighborhood plan, there are sites that are selected to discuss for future development, specifically private development, housing, other types of uses. And oftentimes we're in a position where that plan is completed, it's out there for then developers or other real estate professionals to take up and say, okay, I'm interested in applying for this. It could be land bank land, it could be private land. Through this contract, we'd be able to actually propose to the development community, based on that neighborhood plan, what we would like to see in sufficient detail that we hope that would help achieve those plans more directly.
Mr. Chairman, is this a one-year contract?
It's a 1 year, but then they have 3 years option to renew.
I would amend it, Mr. Chairman. I would move it to amend it, that it be a one-year contract, and that there be quarterly reports to the council as to what initiatives, what projects they're working on.
So are you proffering that motion?
Yes, I am.
All right. So there's a motion on the floor. Would you?
Contract form.
And it's been seconded by Councilman Casey. Any discussion on the
That's
proposal?
fine.
Councilman McCormick.
Thank you. And just for clarification, are we saying that going from a 4-year to a 1-year, or the entire thing with annual legislative renewal required? Yes. So 4-year
that's
contract, but annual legislative, requiring additional legislative review for renewal? Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I believe that's an amendment already in the,
Let me double check, make
that's
sure.
already an amendment.
Yeah, there was. Require planning to come back to us for approval
Yeah.
if they want to renew their
Quarterly?
contract.
As additional.
For the
legislative-
contract.
It just says options exercisable with addition legislative
Okay, it's
authority.
already in there.
It's
Yeah.
already in there, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
as long
Okay.
as we have that ability to, where it's got to
Yeah.
come back to us. So, that the committee's going to have to review and look at the substance of this to see if we're getting the bang for the buck here, because I'm growing concern about all these outside consultants, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, and just to let you know, I've shared that as well with the administration. I know council's getting leery over that, but just a couple of things for clarification. This is the first time that we've used this company, whereas there are other companies that we've used in the past? Or is this the first time we have this kind of contract?
To the chair, this is the first time the planning department is executing this kind of contract.
Okay. The second question that I have is that we are going through an operational review that we paid for with EY. Why would we not wait until that review is done in order to see where we have gaps on, in order to make the changes that we need to the departments? Because aren't they doing a department by department review of your operations?
Through the chair, yes, but not to this minutia. I think those are larger goals that the chiefs can speak to regarding how we might better streamline our operations. This is a departmental goal that I don't believe will be necessarily covered under those specific goals. This is something that we need to do now because we have a lot in the pipeline and we have an urgency to do better for our neighborhoods.
And I hear you, that's kind of the line that we were getting about a lot of things, that we're playing catch up, so we need to have these consultants to help us with catch up. But at some point in time, I think, and where's Conwell? I'm gonna use the Conwell line. We need to make sure that we understand your operational review and your game plan and your strategies, because, you know, we're supporting, we want to be supportive of what you want to do, but we need to understand the long game plan.
And Mr. Chair, my last comment is we aim to be very collaborative with you all with regard to how we're going to execute this contract. We have some ideas, but we're not going to necessarily execute on those ideas without your partnership from across the table. And I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think I'm really trying to run a very efficient, high capacity shop in planning. We are moving personnel into their best fit for their roles, and I believe this will only help them fly.
And I want to make sure I turn it over to Councilman Santana, and I've had enough time, but I do want to say that, you know, the proof is going to be in the pudding. We just want to understand what metrics are we measuring them against, which means that we need to understand the baseline, and then how we are understanding that this investment of the taxpayer dollars of $200,000 have made your process better. So just be aware that that's something that we're going to be asking for. All right, Councilman Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've actually been using the pudding saying with my kids. I'm like, oh my God, forensic. Anyhow, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in DPS, while I support this, I also had the same reservations and concerns. I think through the chair to the director, one of the things that I want to reiterate is my frustration with the community input piece. Right? We go out there, we hire outsiders that really don't understand our neighborhood. So I'm not sure what the right solution and what I'm really asking, but through the chair to the director, with these outside contract, and doing the community engagement, what is your benchmark for success in collecting input from residents when creating these plans?
Great question. Through the chair to the councilwoman. So first, I do believe that this consultant, again, will help us with a lot of the back end work, and that we want our staff to be face forward in the community. Not to mention, a lot of the community members you see on the screen are deeply embedded in our communities that are often underrepresented in planning processes. We have people, everyone from social media influencers to on the ground, you know, folks who speak a multitude of languages, and so that really will help us to reach effectively. And I think you know, hopefully you know how important it is for me to make sure that in our underrepresented neighborhoods that we are reaching people that typically are not involved in those processes. In terms of metrics, I would say that, you know, it would be critical for us to have those stakeholders and to have, I suppose per project, that could be something we would define, you know, per project, because everything could be a research paper to a small area plan. And so it would depend on what the project is, but having that voice from people who typically are not involved is critical.
Okay, thank you. And then my next reservation, well, and you know, going back to the percentage and also you know, the time frame that they're collecting the input is also important. Matt, you know, you worked with us with the master plan, and it took 2 years for us to collect input from residents. So it takes time, and sometimes you guys add, you know, a deadline, which is not realistic, right, to collect input. The second concern that I would have is the the plans, right? Like if council's not here, the mayor's not here, you know, how it's not legislated, this plan, someone could come in, we spent this money and create another plan. So I guess what are we doing to adopt these plans to ensure that they're lasting 10 years here and that no matter who comes, they're being enforced and followed, rather spending all this money on consultants?
Thank you. Through the chair to the councilwoman. That's the purpose of the City Planning Commission as a completely independent body to make sure that the work carries forward. And that's something that we continuously are working on with our commission to say, once we adopt these plans, how are we going to actually use them against the projects that are coming in, as well as how do we ensure that it's integrated into many of our processes, and that's something that we're working on right now. But I do believe in order to get to implementation, we need to take those strategies in that big document and begin to isolate and take some bites out of the overall and to hone in on the strategies that we think will move our neighborhoods forward. And to your point, I think you had a point earlier, but I cannot remember what it was. So,
I guess it was just
yeah.
ensuring that we collect
Yeah.
enough input from residents,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Not just 100, right?
Yep.
Because sometimes we say, we got residents' input, and when you look, it's like 40, input, feedback that you hear, and that's not significant. That's not a
So
lot.
my last comment on that through the chair is actually because it's an on-call, it's a task order, it's actually much more flexible with regard to timelines. So we can adjust much easier than if we had one contract. You know, typically what we do is we do one RFP, we go through this whole process to get a consultant on board to do a master plan, and then they're very time-bounded because that scope is so tight. But with the on-call contract, we can amend the task in order to allow for more time or more voices, and it's a lot more flexible of a tool than a single-shot RFP process.
Got it, okay. And I would just say lastly that to just ensure, because it just hasn't happened, I'm grateful for your leadership, Director. I know you're very vested in our city, but normally the contractors or the consultants don't call the council. They don't know who the local CDC, and so we have no idea that these plans are taking place, and they bring us in when they can't engage residents, as you did, with the lakefront and the riverfront plan. So just to ensure that this consultant understand who's the council person and really
Yes.
reach out to them and meet with them before they start doing any planning would be much appreciated. And so this was heard in DPS. It was approved with the amended, which you already read it. You don't need me to read it, right?
I read it.
Okay, thank you, Council
All right.
President.
Okay, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1200-23 as amended stands approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's cool. All right, a couple more that we have that came out DPS, and this is ordinance number 1184-2023 as amended by Council Members Jones, Bishop, Gray, Hairston, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend the title and sections 1, 2, and 4, and 7 of ordinance number 490-2023 passed May 31, 2023, relating to professional services to establish, implement, and manage a revolving loan fund for a home repair and rehabilitation program for Cleveland's Southside neighborhoods, and to supplement the ordinance by adding a new whereas clause in section 1A, B, and 1C. And this is amended, and the amendment states that there is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In section 1, and amended section 7, line 4, strike or director and insert or directors, and strike executive and insert execute. And this was done 11/21/23 by Stephen Martini.
Yes. Thank you, Council President, members of the committee. 1184 pertains to the ARPA funding that was allocated for the southeast side, specifically to home repair, home rehab, and 5 microgeographies throughout Mount Pleasant and Union Miles, and I believe Harvard as well. This is not a request to approve this funding. The funding has already been approved for a variety of projects with partners. What has come out of the law department when we requested attorney assignments for contracting, they had a number of recommended amendments to the ordinance 490-2023 to allow the contracts to reflect the proposals approved by council. Happy to go through any questions the council has, but as we see this is a technical amendment to what has been previously approved.
Before I move this forward, I was instructed by the chair that he has asked for several items that he was asked to be provided, and I'm going to ask if Mr. Titron, because it's my understanding he hasn't received those. Mr. Titron, do you know if the chair or he's telling me he hasn't received any of this?
I received some. It was what we had specifically asked for. If the chairman asked for additional details on that item.
But you did receive something the chair didn't receive, or what?
Yes, this afternoon.
So you just got it this afternoon then?
Correct.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold this piece until the chair gets a chance to vet that, because we just got that information this afternoon, and I'll make sure I bring you guys back once the chair gets that information. Okay?
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. So we're going to hold 1184 until we get an opportunity for the committee and the chair to get that information. Thank you so much. All right, the next one is ordinance number 1249-2023 by council members Hairston and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend the third whereas clause and section 1 of ordinance number 712-2023 passed August 16th, 2023 to supplement the ordinance by adding a new whereas clause in new section 5 and to renumber existing sections 5, 6, and 7 to new sections 6, 7, and 8 relating to agreements with the various private nonprofit organizations to address vacant or abandoned properties and to provide financing for home repairs to small business economically impacted by COVID-19. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President and members of the board. We do have an amendment that came out of the DP&S last week. Law Department drafted this proposed amendment. Again, this is the same scenario as with 1184. Law Department requested technical changes to the previously approved ordinance 712-2023 so that the proposals as approved by council can be contracted. We're not looking to approve anything new, just to ensure that the council's will is implemented.
Okay, this says that a 10-year period, so you're talking about a 10-year period to implement the entire contract?
So through the chair, the law department had placed, because we're looking to do loans and revolving loans, they wanted to have a deadline on which those funds can be expended, recouped, and put out for new loans, and create a cap on when the program will end. Various programs have different timeframes. In order to create a universal timeframe, the law department has recommended that we end the program 10 years after it's contracted. And this is specific to a question that was raised on section 5 in the amended ordinance. Law Department had originally proposed the language called shall contain a specific date for the return of any unused funds at the end of the period to the city. Council wanted to know what that specific date was. Rather than doing it specific to each contract, Law Department came up with the amendment you see before you to just establish 10 years from the date of contracting.
Is there, can we do a shorter period of time? 10 years seems a little excessive, and I'm just trying to understand where that 10-year came from. Is that
So
a
through
law
the-
department or best practice, or was council? I don't recall us making that amendment, so where did that amendment 10 years
So
come from?
to the chair, the 10 years reflects the proposal types, the types of loans that our partners want to be able to issue. And looking at 10 years as one of the longer terms that we would do. There are other terms that probably would reflect 5 years, forgivable period over 5 years. But this gives us the flexibility to implement the loan types that our partners want to.
So this gives us the ability of the partners to get the loans out the door, but the 10 years is basically giving them the grace period to get paid back?
There was an amendment.
To the chair, yes, that is correct. So these are revolving loan programs. So basically, the first round up into, say, like December 2026, these loans would be made from the ARPA dollars. And then the remaining years, they would be getting the payments from those loans within those terms. And those portions, those repaid portions would be replenishing the loan fund so they can make new loans. But none, after 10 years, they have to stop making loans. And as those repayments come in, that money has to be returned to the city.
So to the chair, this is Gina Ventry. She's the manager for the ARPA programs. She's been working in the law department on fulfilling what the TPNS wanted to see in the ordinance.
No, Ms. Ventry well, so just want to, welcome to the table too, by the way. Okay, so we got Councilman Casey, and then I may have a couple more, but Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the director, this is the $15 million, correct? And it's $4
This is the
million
home
going to
repair.
CHN, da-da-da. So, correct me and educate me, because it's the first time I'm seeing this piece. CHN, we're going to give them $4 million, correct? And then what's our expectation?
Can you-
So the CHN program is going to be a hybrid grant and loan program for home repair activities citywide in the city of Cleveland.
And do we have an expectation of how many loans, the amount of loans? Can we
Yes.
elaborate? And I'm going to ask that same question of all the partners here, because
Yeah.
to me, it just looks like without benchmarks being set in this piece of legislation, we're just giving money out. They can do whatever it is they
So
want to
to
do.
the-
If they spend it, they spend it. If they don't spend it, then they have to give it back. But especially with the 10-year, how do we know they're not going to sit on $4 million collecting interest for 9.5 years, and then all of a sudden try to spend $1 million and then just give 3 back when they've gotten $5 million in interest?
So
on
through the
their
chair,
money?
the councilman, I mean, we agree that that was information that was presented at the time of the adoption of 712-2023. Through the contracting, we are implementing benchmarks, annual deliverables, annual amounts of funds that need to go out the door. Those were presentations that were made previously. I understand you might not recall it. And this is, we're trying to keep it simple and stress that this is a technical amendment to a previously approved authorization. But we are happy to reshare the PowerPoints and the information provided to the council, if that will help.
That would help before I decide to put a yes on this. Mr. Chairman, to the director, is this upfront money?
There'll be, it's proposed that there will be an initial disbursement and then a disbursements of, for the revolving loan programs, there'll be disbursements at various time intervals, either 6 months or a year, obviously contingent on satisfactory program administration, reporting, and performance.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, who holds on to the money? Do we hold on to the money? And then and I'm just using CHN as an example because they're the top of the list. So CHN comes to us and says, we have a $5,000 loan we want to give to somebody. Can we have the money? Is that how it's going to work? Or are we giving CHN $1 million and when they need more, they'll come back and get more? Mr. Chairman, to the director.
So to the chairman, to the councilman, there are disbursement specifics that we can provide to the council. In this case, there is a tranche that is provided up front so they can issue loans. And once they show progress and performance, at the next milestone, which I believe is will be dictated in the contract, they would be eligible for another tranche of funding.
But I get that. But Mr. Chairman, to the director, couldn't they just come to us and say, we've made a $5,000 loan, we need the $5,000. The money's there, we could just give it to them at that point, as opposed to giving them a tranche set of upfront money that we don't know where it's going.
Through the council to the chair, the funds will be going for the purposes outlined in the contract, and monitored and reported on a monthly basis as such. The reimbursement process has its own challenges, but we want to make sure that these ARPA funds, given the need in the community, that the disbursement has been part of the program design, so that these funds can benefit the residents of Cleveland.
Mr. Chairman, to the director, are these ARPA dollars or are these SF $400?
To the chair, to the council, these are, well, if I understand SS 400 being the revenue recovery, my understanding is this is the revenue recovery.
Okay, so they're not ARPA dollars anymore. They're revenue recovery dollars, and there's a difference. Mr. Chairman, to the director, it sounds like you need to provide a lot more information before I'm comfortable with a yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So just a couple more follow-ups before I think a couple more colleagues have a couple of questions. What bothers me, what always gets me about rescue recovery dollars is that these are supposed to be to mitigate a crisis and an emergency. A 10-year plan is not mitigating a crisis or an emergency. It's just another financial tool. So why wouldn't we be able to shorten that period of time? Or will it create hardships if we went down to, say, 5 years instead of 10?
To the council,
Just
at this,
trying to
for the
understand.
purpose of, we can make 5 years work and obviously come back to the table and justify whether or not we need an extension. My goal would not be to get an extension because we haven't used the funds. So if you have 5 years is something that the council would like to see implemented, then we will work with that.
I mean, I would like, there's a couple of things that I think the yearn from the council is to see more deliverables, more measurables of what we're going to actually get for the investment, like how many homes are each one of them going to do, and I know a lot of that's going to be contractual. I would like the 5 years instead of the 10 years because, to me, we have an emergency. This, we just heard last week about homeless dollars that are held up in the law department, and we're starting to see an increase in homelessness. So my point is, these dollars were to mitigate a crisis, and we've already been sitting on them for about a year. I would like to see 5 years, and then if we could do that, but I can't make the amendment. If someone is willing to make the amendment, as the chair, I can't make the amendment. Councilman, move
Does-
5 to
does-
5
does
years.
Bishop wanna do it
did
as
you want to make
chairman?
the amendment? It's off of this one that you got. This one has been made already, right? Oh, this one has not been made on our side.
Correct. The
Okay.
DPNS wanted us to propose an amendment. We went to law department. They proposed that language.
So we could use this language and just change it to 5 if we need to. Thank you.
Brian, are you moving forward without getting all the other information?
Yeah, but we'll get the other information.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to make an amendment.
Go ahead.
All right, Mr. President, in Section 5, change the wording that all revolving loan agreements with agents authorized by this ordinance shall contain a procedure by which the private nonprofit organization will stop making loans at the end of a given maximum 10-year period and shall require the return of unused funds. Okay, that's not the, that's
5 years, yeah.
okay, just
It's a
5
minimum
year.
5 years, period, yeah.
Maximum 5-year period and shall require the return of any unused funds at the end of that period to the city.
All right, do we have a second? Second. Second is Casey. All right, any discussion? Councilman-
Chair, I
Councilman-
would just say, I mean, I think even 5 years is too long. So in my opinion, I would love to see 3 years and then one option of extending. But that is just my opinion. What a 2-year option. But, I mean, 5 years is a long time for us to actually review processes and benchmarks and success.
So, anybody else have any discussion on that? Anybody else? Any other comments on that before we out? Anybody? Councilman
okay with that?
McCormick, do you have something?
No.
3 and 2 1 years.
So, let me ask you this. 3 and 2 1 years, is that too cumbersome, or is 5 years just enough to get you by? Just want to give you guys the opportunity to give feedback. You and Ms.
So
Victory,
through the,
you guys.
to the chair and the committee, the greater certainty and less variability, they're coming back and asking for permission to get 2 additional years will not be seen very favorably by our partners.
I tell you what, let's just stick with 5, because I know we're dealing with outside partners and they're a little bit more cumbersome on paperwork than most others. But that 5 years is going to be a hard hit. I just want to, urge that Councilwoman's right. 3 years is even kind of like, we want to see this hit yesterday. And we've already been sitting on these for about a year. So I tell you what we can do. Why don't we push to have a review to see where we are at after you make the call and you make that amendment. So let's pass this amendment for 5 years cap first, and then make the amendment on when you want us to review. Okay. So I'm going to call the roll on Councilman Bishop's amendment. All in favor say aye. Any opposed?
I'm going to recuse from this amendment.
Okay, recuse. Councilman McCormick, please mark Councilman McCormick as recused. Okay. Councilwoman Santana, you had a recommendation for review.
So I would like to motion to add, or I don't know if it's amend, for community development to come back after 2 years, or it could be a year after. No, I think a year is too. I would say 2 years for us to know where they are at in their process.
Okay, so Attorney, do you have that Councilwoman Santana has proffered an amendment to come back before council 2 years after the contract is executed to share their progress with us? Okay, so we have 2 amendments. Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a
Hold up, before we do that, do we have a second for Councilwoman Santana's amendment? Councilwoman Spencer is seconded, and now we're in discussion. Councilman McCormick.
Thank you. Please note me as a recusal on amendments and discussion of this ordinance, please, and voting. Thank you.
All right, please recuse Councilman McCormick on amendments and everything regarding this, okay? Thank you. Please note, duly noted. All right, all in favor of Councilwoman Santana's amendment for review after 2 years, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, seeing no other conversation, ordinance number 1200-2023 stands approved. Thank you, sir.
Is this one off the agenda?
Oh, we could do it, though. This you? No, this is Community Relations Board.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's not you. Which one is you? What number are you looking for?
That was,
I got 13, I got 1249, 1299, 1256, and 1343.
54?
1354?
1254.
1254?
This is the housing ARPA.
Oh, that one is, we're going to get back to that one and hold that one. We got, that one want to reroute to DPS. That one is, got some questions about the scoring on that one with 1254. All right, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to go to ordinance number 1249-2023 by council members Hairston and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend the third whereas clause in and section 1 of ordinance number 712-2023 passed August 16th, 2023 to supplement the ordinance by adding a new whereas clause in new section 5 and to renumber existing section 5, 6, and 7 to new sections 6, 7, and 8 relating to agreements with various nonprofit organizations to address vacant and abandoned properties and provide financing. Didn't we just do this one?
Yeah.
Okay, we just did this one. Yeah. All right. Okay. Ordinance number 1249, 2023 stands approved. Yes, it's amended, as amended. All right, ordinance number 1299-2023 by council members Harrison and Griffin by departmental requests, an emergency ordinance to amend various ordinances authorizing 5 tax increment financing projects to extend the exemption from taxation for certain parcels in the city for an additional 30 years to supplement the development and the public improvements to be made to benefit those in other parcels and declaring an emergency. Director.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council. So what we have in front of Council today is an ordinance to extend the term of 5 separate TIFs across the city that have been previously authorized and are currently in effect. We have a brief presentation to walk through, which is the same presentation Chief Epstein presented during the DPS committee last week, and he'll be here momentarily to walk through and answer any questions that you all have. So I think an important piece of context to keep in mind with respect to this ordinance is that we have a limited time to extend these existing TIFs in the biennial budget bill passed by the General Assembly earlier this year. The General Assembly reopened a limited time window to extend existing TIFs that have produced at least $1.5 million a year in service payments at some point during that TIF's existence. And this is for TIFs that were eligible for an extension in the past, were not extended. And so if we do not extend them during this window, which expires at the end of the year, we will lose the opportunity to do that. So with respect to our objectives, again, it's to capitalize on this limited time opportunity to extend these eligible TIFs, to enable remote TIF authority, which if the authority is provided, would allow us to use the service payments generated in a particular TIF outside of the boundaries of that TIF. So as we'll get into a little later, we're looking at, say, the Lower Euclid TIF, which has sort of parameters to it. Under the current setup of the TIF, we can only use the proceeds of that TIF in the district. Under the legislation that is in front of council, we would be able to spend that money outside of the district to promote broader projects in the downtown area or elsewhere. And then extending these 5 TIFs, it really does take the first essential step toward realizing the shore to core to shore vision of investing in our lakefront, our downtown, and our riverfront to really remake the city and turn it into a much more competitive and viable place.
Just a quick TIF 101 refresher. I know you all see these all the time, but just for the public, if they're watching, TIFs are a tool to capture the increase in value of property taxes in a particular project or a particular area. And so we enact the TIF. The base value, if you're paying $100 before the TIF and taxes, you continue to pay those $100. It continues to go to all the different sources that taxes go to. But if it increases to $200, the non-school amount of that increase what we call the pilots, or the service payments, and those are payments that then get diverted to support the project. And so it's only the increase. I think an important piece for everybody to know who may be watching is that this is not money that is coming out of the city's general fund, that is coming out of pocket. This is money that is only created if the increase in property value comes. And so this is just another way of showing that baseline property value. So nobody that is currently receiving taxes on a particular parcel is getting any less after the TIF goes in.
So these are on the screen are the 5 TIFs that are eligible for extension in this brief window that the General Assembly has opened. Lower Euclid, the Hilton TIF, Westin Hotel, Steelyard Commons, and the VA Hospital. These were authorized at varying points over the last 20 years and have, as a result, varying expiration dates. And so this extension would take effect upon the expiration of each individual TIF. And then on the far right, we see what the non-school revenue is, what it was during 2022 from each of these TIFs, which totals $6 million. Right now, the service payments for each of these goes to support the project that the TIF was established to support. So for Lower Euclid, most of the proceeds there are going to pay debt service on bonds that the city issued to kickstart the East Fourth project. And then each of the other TIFs is going to pay debt service for the individual projects that are listed. And here's just a map of where each of the TIFs is located. 3 of them downtown, 1 in the flats, and 1 over on the east side by University Circle.
And I think important to note here, one of the things we're not doing today is coming in and asking that any of these dollars be allocated in any particular way. This is just extending the TIF. We expect that we will be back in the future to talk about that, and I think, you know, as we talked about when we were at this table with the Bedrock Development Agreement, the intent is to use the downtown pieces here, so the Weston, Hilton, and Lower Euclid to support the shore to core to shore TIF district. We'll be bringing that back early next year. The intent with Steelyard and VA, I think, is still to be determined, but I think the administration is currently thinking about those TIFs as separate from the shore to core to shore. They might help seed a TIF district in a particular neighborhood. We might decide to use those proceeds as we currently have with Steelyard, where there are TIF proceeds that are used to support a variety of CDCs and neighborhood activities in the area of Steelyard Commons. So we'll kind of determine that in the future.
And so when thinking about what extending these TIFs does, it extends the service payments an additional 30 years after the expiration of the initial term of the TIF. In that second term, the proceeds will not go to support the project because we will have fulfilled our obligations with that regard. For the first 30 years, instead, the proceeds will come into a fund, which, as Jeff just alluded to, will be available to support the shore to core to shore work and neighborhood improvements when looking at the VA and the Steelyard TIFs.
And just to go back 1 second, I just want to highlight a point here, as we were asked this at the DPS table. This will have no impact on the current property owners or projects. They're just going to continue to pay their taxes. Years, you know, it's even second 30 years rather than them getting the money as we'd agreed on. But before, the money will go to the city, but they will see no change.
The second thing that the ordinance would do is enable the remote TIF authority, which I think is really important when we're thinking about being able to use the proceeds of these TIFs to support projects outside of the specific geography of each TIF. And so with the remote TIF authority, we will be able to, say, take revenues from the Veterans Administration Hospital TIF and use it to support projects in Glenville and other neighborhoods that are adjacent, but it could be anywhere throughout the city. And the same would apply for each of these TIFs that has the remote authority attached to it, and that it gives the city great flexibility in how we decide to use the funds that are created through these TIF mechanisms. And then finally, like I alluded to earlier, it does lay the groundwork for the shore to core to shore TIF district. You know, these extensions are a really important component of that effort and the broader TIF district that Jeff alluded to earlier, in that they're existing TIFs that have a history of producing revenue and doing so at a very strong level over the last, you know, for the Lower Euclid TIF, it's been 20 years, and others have been more recent. And so it'll lend some financial credibility to the overall TIF district that we're hoping to set up early next year through council action, and provide some predictable sources of revenue to support projects downtown and throughout the city. Throughout all of this, our expectation and goal is to keep the schools whole. And so with these extensions, they do not include the school portion. It's only the remaining about 40% of a property tax bill that gets paid that would be part of the revenue that we would have the ability to direct. And that's it.
All right, thank you. First of all, just a couple of questions, and I think you answered a couple already. If we did absolutely nothing, basically this money would just go to the county. It wouldn't come to the city, right? So basically what we're doing is taking money that at the end of 2033, if we did absolutely nothing, would then revert to the county for property taxes, and city wouldn't see anything, right?
To the chairman, we would get our portion of the property tax bill, which is, I think, about 12% of a residential tax bill. And then the rest is distributed among the county, metro parks, city library district, a variety of other overlapping entities. So, but to your point, yes. If we did not extend these TIFs, once each of them expires, the property tax payments would just go to the county and be distributed as any property tax payment is. With the extension, the city would get to keep the full non-school portion to help support projects across the city.
Okay. Then number two, we're not taking any money or forcing any of the current owners that live in this footprint to, we're not taking anything from them in this process, because I know some had concerns about why are they taking tax abatement from us and from their area and redistributing it to another project.
To the chair, we're not.
Okay.
They're going to continue to pay their property tax bill as they always do. And once the agreement between the city and that project or that developer expires at the end of the term of the initial term of the TIF, then we will have done what we had committed to do to support their project, and they'll just continue paying their property taxes, and it's up to the city to determine how to distribute those funds going forward.
All right. And by us having a remote TIF, we are not just setting up these districts that will be self-fulfilling itself. So in other words, this money in this district, because we have a remote TIF, can be used outside of just the project area, right? Do we have a formula to know how much would have to be used for the project area? And then what amount would be able to be redistributed to neighborhood projects? Do we know how that formula will break down, or do we have to create a formula?
To the chair, we do not. I think that is, to Jeff's point earlier, the focus here is on extending the existing TIFs and ensuring that we have the tool available to us. And to come in the future is the discussion of how to allocate those monies. And so we're purposefully avoiding the allocation discussion right now because there's a lot up in the air still about how we want to, what is the most effective way to allocate these proceeds going forward to ensure, A, that we achieve the objective of, when thinking about the downtown TIF district that's coming in the future legislatively, how we can ensure the success of that district, because that is fundamental to then be able to have the resources needed to invest in projects throughout the city.
There's 4 to 6 high volume job creation districts. When you look at University Circle, Downtown Central Business District, the airport, I dare to say Johnson Parkway, and I might be missing 1 or 2. How come we aren't just TIFing mostly all of those districts where we have the best opportunity for growth and really helping in those areas? Is that something that we're looking at? Like, why are we just doing a portion of downtown? Why aren't we looking at doing more? Because to me, this is very similar to commercial tax abatement like Columbus is doing. And I know they do whole areas of town. So why do we just pick one area as opposed to look at our high growth areas to try to focus on these TIFs?
Yeah, to the chair, I'd say today we're not doing downtown at all. This is just about extending these districts. You know, we will have the legislation later on, and we can talk about the geographies of that. I will say, anytime we put one of these TIFs in place, it does take future revenue away from other partners that are good partners that we want to support. And so I think it's a balance of doing this to advance critical priorities for the city and keep tax dollars being spent in the city, with also wanting to make sure that we continue to support the other taxing jurisdictions in the area.
Well, first of all, I'm a fan of this project. I think this is a good funding resource to do. actually talking to my friend, Councilman McCormick, I mean, he made some suggestions that we do this to a couple of other areas as well. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, that the taxpayers in the city have confidence that this isn't just another project that helps self-perpetuate downtown and that we can't find a way to utilize for other parts of the city. So just want to make sure that we can help articulate that. And as you know, I'm a big fan of, we got to bring in revenue and we have to make the city attractive. So we got to make these kind of investments in order to bring more exciting new projects into the city. So Councilman Casey and Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on that slide, or Mr. Chairman to the director, on that slide there, are you saying that currently, right now, we bring in $6 million, the city gets $6 million a year? Explain that one to us.
Through the chair to the councilman. So what that reflects is currently there's an aggregate of $6 million of payments in lieu of taxes being made by property owners impacted by each of those TIFs that is going back to the project to support. It could be debt or other costs of the project.
So that $6 million goes back to the 5 individual projects. Okay, the city does not receive anything currently.
Correct.
And then in 2033, these TIFs come off the books, right? But you're looking for the 30-year extension, correct? And then what's the approximate amount? And I know it's 10 years away. What would you think the approximate amount would be that the city would start receiving then after 2033?
Through the chair to the councilman, I think some of it depends on what assumptions we make about property tax increase.
Your best guess.
Look at a 3.5% to 5.5% annual increase on each of these, compounded over 10 years. I couldn't do the math exactly, but my gut tells me 8 to 10.
No one's holding you to it. Maybe 8 to 10 is what the city would garner a year off of us doing this, correct? In 2033.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman. I think that's right. The right way to think about it is, citywide we've seen about a 3% annual property tax increase over the last 10 or so years. So if you extrapolate that out, it's probably a little, with the compounding nature of those increases, probably a little more than 10, but somewhere around the $10 million mark.
Okay, so just so, Mr. Chairman to the director, just so I understand this, right? So currently they're paying $6 million. That $6 million goes back into their projects, right? And that's the deal that they made with the city, right? Starting in 2033, our obligation is done with. So we'll just keep these numbers at $6 million, right? That $6 million then would forget your interest and all. If this was to happen tomorrow, that $6 million then comes back to the city, and you're saying that it's not obligated to go back into these projects, that it could be dispersed however the city feels necessary, correct?
Through the chair of the councilman, that's correct, although I'll note there are a staggered series of expirations of these TIFs. So it's only lower
I'm just saying
Euclid in
starting
2033,
yeah. We'll just say they all expired, right? We're just so that.
But yes, that's correct.
Just so that I can explain it when I go back out, when somebody calls me asking me if I voted for a TIF or not, right? I can at least have the knowledge to explain it. And then, Mr. Chairman, to the director, even though this is future money, you don't plan on spending any of it until it starts becoming available, correct?
Through the chair to the councilman, I think the way we're thinking holistically about how to use TIF generally, right? So as we've discussed, there's going to be legislation presented to council to recommending the creation of a downtown TIF district, and that is largely or in part going to be created to help pay the costs of public improvements on the lakefront, the riverfront, and in the downtown, in addition to improvements in neighborhoods outside of downtown. How and when we spend will kind of depend on the needs of the aggregate projects and what we could borrow up front against future revenue so that we can get work going and create the conditions in which property values can increase throughout the city to sort of make this bet pay off. Because essentially what we're doing is we're making a long-term bet that the investments we're going to make downtown and across the city will help drive and promote greater property value appreciation so that our taxes, our property tax revenue overall increases, and we see a lot of really good benefits as a result of that. And so the sooner we can get that work moving, the more likely it is that we'll achieve those objectives. And so, you know, when you layer these extended TIFs into the TIF district, if it's created, what we'll do then is figure out what is the most effective way to balance borrowing money to get upfront cash to get work going versus leaving enough money in the till so that we can do ongoing pay-as-you-go capital work as well.
All right, and then one last question, if I could, Mr. Chairman, to the director. Suppose in 2045 the Hilton closes, right, and it's no longer existing. What happens at that portion, even though they've got, do they still get, would the property still have the 30-year TIF, except the TIF money doesn't have to go back into the property? Or it will just say the Hilton shuts and it's shuttered for 2 years, right? When it opens back up, is that property still TIF'd for an additional 28 years, we'll say, or whatever?
Through the chair, yes, it would, and whoever owns that property would still have the obligation to pay the service payments as part of the TIF structure,
Okay.
because they have to pay their taxes. Either they pay into the TIF or they pay their property taxes. And if they fail to do either, they're delinquent on their payment obligations. And so that would trigger the same kind of remedies that the county uses when someone is delinquent on their taxes. But the obligation to pay whatever that assessed amount is would continue. The only difference is instead of going to the county to be distributed among all of the overlapping taxing entities, it would be distributed to the schools for their portion and to the city for the city's portion of the TIF.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to note, this went through the Development Planning Sustainability Committee, passed unanimously as well. There was a lot of robust conversation. I think this is really a smart and creative way to generate revenue for important projects throughout the city of Cleveland. Chair, as we all know in this room, revenue is tight, and we have a lot of services to provide to our community. So if all the ways in which we can find creative ways to come up with sources of revenue for really catalytic projects. Once again, the remote thing being key here, so that they can be used throughout the city of Cleveland, not just in the downtown neighborhood, but other neighborhoods outside of the downtown neighborhood. I think is a really important piece to this. So kudos to the team for coming up with the creative avenues to drive revenue to get stuff done that's going to change the city for decades and decades and decades to come. Once again across the city. So really appreciate this innovative thinking and support this ordinance, Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Spencer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I did have an opportunity to hear the presentation at DPS committee last week. I am supportive of this piece. I think it's creative and also particularly interested in the remote TIF authority aspect of it as well. I was just having an elephant in the room moment, though. We were talking about capturing property tax increases and perhaps driving increases even higher in order to drive property tax revenues higher. I have mixed feelings. I just wanted to be on record in saying I have mixed feelings about that. When we increase property taxes on our property owners, it drives up rents, and I would just encourage us to remember that there's an interesting balance there. I don't know the downtown rental market as well as I know the rental market in Ward 15. I think rents are already pushing pretty high, and so it's just going to be an interesting balance going forward in terms of what is reasonable for our rental market to withstand. We are already a very heavily taxed community when it comes to property taxes. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1299-2023 stands approved. Appreciate it. All right, we're going, what you got up, Director?
1302, 1303, and 1344.
1302.
02 and 03 are the police contracts.
Where they at? That's not a ballistic. Okay, what is it? 02, what else?
02 and 03 are the police contracts.
02 and 03?
Yeah, and
Let's
we,
get those done.
in public safety, we did them together because
Okay.
they're basically the same.
All right. So ordinance number 1302-2023 by council members Polinsik and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance approving an addendum to the 2022-2025 collective bargaining agreement with Fraternal Order of Police Lodge Number 8 FOP, and to amend Section 54 of ordinance number 194-2021 passed March 29, 2021, as amended, relating to salaries for various classifications. Ordinance number 1303-2023 by council members Polinsik and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance approving an addendum to the 2022 through 2025 collective bargaining agreement with Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association, Non-Civilian Division of Police, and to amend Section 55 of ordinance number 194-2021 passed March 29th, 2021, as amended, relating to salaries for various classifications. Director and Director.
Thank you, Chair, Council. I have a brief opening statement that I would like to walk through, and then I'm happy to take any questions that any of the members have. So in June of this year, at the Mayor's direction and as part of the Mayor's RISE initiative, the administration approached the CPPA and FOP leadership to form a small working group to come up with concrete actions we could take to address recruitment and retention of police officers and enhance deployment of officers currently on the force. This resulted in a series of meetings in which leadership of the unions, members of the administration, and outside counsel for all parties worked diligently with the assistance of a mediator to identify shared issues in mutually beneficial solutions. This approach reflected a huge shift in the terms of engagement between the city and the unions. Historically, we've engaged in sort of this back and forth. We come in with our positions and then kind of inch our way to an agreement that we might all make with gritted teeth. But instead, we engaged in a process where we focused on our shared issues and really did attempt to come up with mutually beneficial solutions to those issues. This required a lot of trust and candor, and fortunately, I think with the result in front of you, we had a lot of both during these meetings. And I'd like to just take a moment to recognize the great work of the current CPPA President, Jeff Fulmer, and the FOP President, Jim O'Malley, for their leadership during this. I know changing decades-long approaches to the way we work is not always the easiest thing, and they were terrific partners in this work. So during this process, we really focused on three discrete things. With respect to recruitment and retention, we focused on cadet pay and other enticements to bring cadets into the academy. Those included the up to $5,000 sign-on bonus for new cadets, the reimbursement for academy fees incurred if somebody went to the Tri-C Academy and then decided to come to the Division of Police. We have set up a process in which they'll be reimbursed for the out-of-pocket expenses for attending the Tri-C Academy. And then increasing the cadet pay to, I think it was $15 an hour, up to 83% of the Patrol 4, which is the entry-level patrolman pay rate. So at the time, that put the pay rate at just over $24 an hour. With the rates of pay that you have in front of you, that actually brings the cadet pay up to $25 an hour. And then finally, with respect to cadets, for those with a college degree or prior military service, when they join the force, they join as Patrol 3, which is the second level up, as opposed to the entry-level Patrol 4, which in that first year equates to about a $3,000 to $4,000 bump in pay. With respect to the wage increases, which are in the legislation in front of you, we agreed to, for Patrol 1, which is the senior patrol officer classification, a 12% pay raise, and then for each of the other patrol categories, a 2.5% pay raise. And then for FOP, given the way their salaries are calculated, which is a 16% rank differential, so sergeants are 16% above Patrol 1, lieutenants are 16% above sergeants, and so on, a 12% pay raise for those individuals as well. And then with respect to deployment, we agreed to implement 12-hour shifts for anyone working basic patrol starting January 1st. So if you think about it, right now we have, there's an 8-hour shift and then 2 10-hour shifts during the day. With those 3 shifts, let's say we have 1,200 officers, that's 400 officers per shift working at any given time. Now that starting on January 1, we'll have 2 shifts, same 1,200 officers, you now have 600 working at the same time. So with the 12-hour shift approach, we have increased significantly the amount of officers who are working at any moment and out there providing for the public safety in the community. And so, I think from the administration's perspective, these enhancements were essential. They were long overdue. The rates of pay for our police officers has historically been quite low when compared to our peers across the state. And these agreed upon wages really do a lot to bring us up to the top of the wage scales across the state, particularly when compared to our big city peers, the top 10 cities in the state. And also will ensure that we are using the resources we have to maximum effect. And I note that sort of wrapped up in all of this is, of course, the notion that these are changes, particularly on the financial side, that we can afford long-term. And so with that, happy to answer any questions.
So you jump right into the question that I have, and if you can just give me a raw number, how much more is this going to cost us a year?
So if you look at our staffing as of pay period 15, which is the numbers that we used as we were costing out the proposals, and compared to current wages, this agreement would cost us $10.4 million additional. If you measure it against the wages that we had already agreed to take effect on April 1 of 2024, it costs an additional $8.5 million.
So we're probably looking at about 18 million more.
Well, it's 10.4 or 8.5, depending on the measuring point.
Depending on the measuring.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just go on high end. It's probably about 10.4.
10.4.
The only thing that I want to always make sure of this, because it's always a balance, because 12 hours is a long shift.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
say.
I'm always concerned about the officers. I know that they're going to go, I think, 3 days on, and then the Pittman model that gives them more weekends and more of a healthier lifestyle. But we need more bodies. Is this in any way going to impede our ability to hire more police officers? I know Mike Polensek already has probably asked you that question, but just for the listening audience, how are we having that sweet spot where we don't we get to the point where we're paying a few great guys a great salary, but we need more bodies?
Yep. To the chair, there are really, when it comes to the compensation, 2 fundamental objectives here. One is to keep the folks we have. Because if you look over the last few years, we have lost an immense amount of police officers. And not all of that is because of compensation. People were in the drop program, so they actually had to retire by a certain date. I think what was most concerning when we looked at the data was we have seen an increase in folks leaving at year 15, year 16, which seems like just frankly a crazy decision given how vested you are in the system, in this division. You're likely in leadership, whether you're in patrol or the promoted ranks. And so one is just set salaries at levels that are competitive so folks do not feel like they have to go to a suburban department, RTA, Cleveland State, Case Western, whatever force you might be looking at to make more money. And so with this, for example, with the increase for Patrol 1, we're now above what RTA is paying for similarly situated individuals. So that's, I think, on that level, should do a lot in keeping the folks we have. Second is when people are considering where to work, whether they're signing up for academy or they're assessing their lateral movement options, to set a salary scale that is compelling for them to want to come here. In our work through this process and talking to leadership in the division, talking to leadership in the union, a common refrain was that when folks are considering where to work, they're looking at the top salary. They're not looking at what your salary is in year 1, they're looking at the top. And given with what we did last year by reducing the years it takes to get to the top from 10 to 5, and now this year increasing the top salary by 12%. This has made us much more competitive from that point as well, from a recruitment perspective. Before these, at this point, we are in the 50th percentile for top pay in patrol across the state. If these wages take effect, we'll be at the 75th percentile. So we really will jump up to where we need to be. There will always be suburban districts, suburban departments that are going to pay, money that we as a large city could never afford. But when we look at the big cities, the only two that are ahead of us now are Columbus and Cincinnati. And we're right on Cincinnati's heels. Columbus, I would love for us to be in a position to catch, but I mean, they're paying, I think their top rate of pay right now is $106,000 for a patrolman, which is far out of our reach. But the goal here is to not just retain, but to recruit, because we know we need more folks.
All right. Well, that's important, because I think we need more bodies. And this goes the union contract through 2025, which means that you'll get right back to the negotiating table next year or 2 years right now.
To the chair, that is correct.
Wow. And ARPA money and rescue recovery dollars are pretty much gone. So we're in a position to sustain this over a period of time.
To the chair, yes, we have not used, and I refused to allow us to use revenue recovery money to cover any salaries. So when we were assessing what we could afford, we were using our recurring revenues through tax, fees, et cetera. We were not looking at any other source.
Well, I want to commend, Mr. O'Malley as well as Mr. Fomer. Both of them have been really patient and doing whatever they can to try to work with their rank and file. And I know that oftentimes these negotiations are tough, but we found ourselves in a position where we had to pay our officers more. I just hope that over a period of time that we just don't start falling off and think because we're paying who we have here that that's enough. I think we need to get to a strong budgeted number and really find that sweet spot. One other thing, I know that there was some questions, and I've always asked this question about the consent decree. Are we in compliance with the consent decree with our staffing levels?
To the chairman, there are no minimum staffing requirements in the consent decree. The monitoring team and the Department of Justice reviewed sort of the full package here, and particularly with respect to the wage piece, we're greatly encouraged because they agree that we need more officers, despite the fact that it's not contractually required in the consent decree.
All right, thank you. I'll go to the dean first, and then I'll go to the second dean. And I'll put McCormick on. So I have Polensek, Conwell, McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, and to the director and to the director of civil service. We discussed both pieces of legislation at length in the committee. Obviously, you raised some of the same concerns that were raised during the committee process, especially with regard to the 12-hour shifts, which is a great concern to many of us as it pertains to the potential wear and tear on the officers that are going to be working the street. And again, only time will tell as it pertains to that. We support, and I've long maintained, that we need to increase the pay for our men and women in blue, both for our rank and file and for the sergeants and above. I would have liked to seen a higher increase for signing bonus, but again, as we know within council, we don't hire, we don't fire, we don't deploy, we don't negotiate, nor administer. So that was up to the administration. I do want to also commend the head of CPPA and FOP for their due diligence in sitting down with the administration, and for the administration understanding the great concern that we have within the body and with our citizens with regard to law enforcement and crime and public safety issues. You only have to look at the daily crime reports and where we're at. And as of last week, Mr. Chairman, I believe we're at 153 homicides in the city. We're on a course to hit a 30-year high in the present rate we're at. We are at, I believe, the director, if he can remember the number, I believe it was 1,193 or 91 in the Division of Police.
1,191.
91. And so for you, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues, what is being proposed here as the director indicated, is based on that number, that 10.4. So over the next 2 years, you're looking at about 20.8 million for the increase. And then again, as most members are aware, as the police budget increases, so does the budget for the Citizens Police Commission, because they get an automatic percentage of the city's, of the police budget, which is of great concern. The real question will be, Mr. Chairman, as you've touched on it, there's some men and women in the Division of Police who've spoken to me who believe that because of going to 12 hours, there will not be an emphasis on hiring. And I want to say again to the director who is here, and I don't see anybody here from the command staff of police and the safety director's office, the proof will be in the pudding. Residents want more police officers on the street. I got to tell you that without every meeting I'm at. I heard it on election day on issue 38, people coming out of the booth talking to me. They want more visibility. They want more response. They want to see more police officers working their streets. So again, by going to 12 hours, there's some members of the division believe that that is going to be a drawback for hiring additional police officers. I hope that's not the case. I hope come next year, first quarter, that we're going to see a bunch of folks apply for the Division of Police. But the administration has got to make this a priority. We are at 19, 20 levels in the Division of Police. No one alive has ever experienced this in the city of Cleveland. We're seeing and we're experiencing things that none of us, especially myself, Mr. Chairman, as a senior member, that I've never experienced in my neighborhood. Never, ever have I experienced some of the things I'm dealing with. And so I'm here to be supportive of the administration. Again, I want to commend them for realizing that they had to up the pay, for taking that lead. And again, I think listening to some of the things that were coming out of City Council as well. So I'm here to support Ordinance 1302, Mr. Chairman, and Ordinance 1303. But we've got our work cut out for us collectively. And again, I want to just reiterate to the administration, to the director who's here on behalf of the mayor and command staff of CPD, we're going to be watching to see if you're going to really hire police officers. If you don't, then all we've done is increase budgetary amounts. That's all we've done. And at the end of the day, we're not going to have the results in our neighborhoods that we want. So again, I'm here to be supportive, but I'm looking to the administration to really come through on this, Mr. Chairman, and that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
Thank you very much. When police were leaving, and that you guys, through the chair to the human resource director, when they attrition. We did exit interviews, correct? And the exit interviews mainly said what? Did you tabulate them? You write it down? The why. It wasn't always because people think it's because of money. What did it say? Training, money, what?
Through the chair to Councilman Conwell. So the majority that I have seen in terms of patrol officers leaving have been due to financial reasons. They're going to the suburbs primarily. Maple Heights, Garfield Heights, RTA, as Chief mentioned. But yeah, the majority of that I've seen have been due to financial reasons.
Left for that reason. And what was the number 2 reason why they said they left, or number 3?
Through the chair to the councilman, I really couldn't say in terms of a second or third reason. The ones that struck me mostly were the individuals who had anywhere between just a few months up to as many as 15 or 16 or 17 years, leaving to go to another department.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that the retention issue is very, very important, in addition to the recruitment issue.
Yeah, they correlated recruiting and retention. So your recruiting cost, how much, and in the retention, you bring people in, and they said they left. Man, I would tabulate that to the chair, to the director, because you want to know, so we won't repeat. And when we train, we put it into our training through the chair.
Through the chairman, I would wholeheartedly agree with you that there is a cost, and actually the cost of losing them, although I don't have a number for you, just in general, you're talking about someone going through the whole process up through and including training, as an officer, all the labor hours that are associated with that,
Right.
Amongst other things. So, although I don't have a number, I can tell you it's a big number.
Yeah, recruiting and training. Recruiting and retention. The finance director, he never puts it down when the mayor presents his transmittal to council. That really should be, when you show your cost of labor, sick time, vacation time, training, all that stuff should be put in there, because recruiting it's in the budget, but they never show it. And I look at it, and every year, even before you got here, it disappoints me, because retention. Let's say you recruit 20 officers, but only 8 graduated, or maybe 7 graduated. You want to know why. And then you want to look at the dollars, how much it costs you to recruit them, as well as retention. So then when you train the workers, you see what I'm saying? All that is built in, because you want to know the why. And that's why I said the top 3 should be there. He knows. The other thing that scares me about this 12-hour work schedule, do me a favor, and I know you're not going to do it. I know the finance guy should do it. He's going to do it, but they're not going to tell us. You got to track workers' compensation. If you're putting people on for 12 hours and they're tired, and if we have more accidents, risk. You do a risk analysis on it, and you want to know why workers' comp is going up with police officers. And you need to track that as well as track sick time, because sick time also is in that budget, and that'll hurt us. So you'll tell everyone else, we got 12 police officers. Sick time is shift. Overtime shift from overtime to sick time to losing workers' retention because you beat them up because of 12 hours. And then the workers' compensation will go through the roof. But you got to track it, and you have to tell us what's going on through the chair to the finance officer. Sir?
Through the chair, we absolutely intend to track all of that. We presently, through the Bureau of Workers' Comp and the Division of Risk Management, we would track workers' comp across the city. I would note, right now, given our shift schedule and our staffing, one significant complaint we've heard over and over again is the imposition of mandated overtime on police officers. And so a lot of our officers are working 16 hours
Yeah, that kills
right
you
now.
too. I know, that gets you.
And
that gets you right
I think
there.
one of the benefits of moving to the 12-hour shift schedule and having more of our uniformed personnel out at any given moment is that the instances in which we have to mandate overtime should go down dramatically.
Yeah,
I can't sit here today and say that it's never going to happen, but it should happen at a much lower rate than it currently does.
It should happen.
Which means folks who are reliably working 16 hours going presently, going forward, should reliably only be working 12 hours.
Right.
And so I think part of it is putting 12-hour shifts on paper increases the amount of work people are doing on paper, but in reality, a lot of our folks are working 16 hours already. And this actually, if it works, will reduce the amount of time that they're working.
Yeah, it will cut overtime, I see. Because if you say you're going to do 12, 16, your overtime will be here. But if you say you're going to do 12, you're going to cut that 4 out instead of doing the 16. But then we got to watch it. Will it shift over to, with your cost of labor, to workers' compensation more? Will it drive that more? So that I think that's where Ed is working. He works on that. He's pretty good.
Yes.
You know, so it's just those trends. And so I would look at, through the chair, the 3 reasons why. Because you have exit interviews, and the exit interviews tell you a story. And it's more than, it could be command staff, it could be training, it could be no one is listening to me, it could mean that no one is cultivating the workers, all those kind of things when you read the exit interview. And you tabulate it through the chair to the finance director. That's where I'm at. I need Becky to do some writing.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, I have Councilman McCormick.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to speak in favor of this ordinance. As I've expressed to everybody in the room and publicly, this was the roughest summer I've ever had from a public safety perspective on my time on council. I don't have to tell anybody in this room, and many of us in this room are residents of the city of Cleveland. If you can't feel safe in your community, not much else matters. So appreciate over the summertime the engagement between the various levels of law enforcement, federal on down, to mitigate those issues. But I think that this is a important step for a long-term solution to ensuring that we have folks in the Division of Police to protect our neighborhoods. Because as I told council members and the mayor, I go to block clubs, and it was the only thing I would hear for months. And you always hear issues here and there, but it was the only thing people were talking to me about. So really appreciate that we're, from a systemic standpoint, looking at ways to resolve these issues. It's already been noted, but I was going to say, I talked to patrol officers, and I can guarantee you a ton of them are working more than 12 hours today. And much more than their shift because they're held over because of their numbers. So, I mean, while it'd be great if everyone didn't have to work beyond their shift, they're already doing it. So I appreciate you saying that. And I do want to make sure that that's out there because I don't want people thinking that they're not, because they are working their tails off to cover shifts, and many are held over. So I want to make sure that that's recognized. Chair, both of these ordinances I think are really important to pay our folks what they deserve. Incredibly difficult job patrolling, protecting the streets of Cleveland every single day. And I think that these increases really help bring pay closer to what these folks deserve and what they've worked really, really hard to do on a daily basis. I'm hopeful, especially with the cadet pay. That's something I've heard from patrol officers, is that problematic cadet pay. Hopefully that will address the inflow of folks into the department, but then as well as the adjustments up and down the line. So again, I know that this is a step. This isn't solving everything, but this is the critical issue in our community is public safety. That's not a surprise to anybody. And hopefully with this, we get to a point where we can continue to recruit quality police officers in the city of Cleveland and retain. As the chief said, that's another really scary thought is the idea of losing folks as well. So I'm excited to see this go into effect. Appreciate the hard work on this. It's a worthy investment to keep our neighborhoods safe, from Ward 1 to 17, 15 to 8, and everybody in between. Folks have to feel safe in their community, and if they don't, again, not a lot more matters than that. So, Chair, I support this. Our police officers deserve this increase in pay, and I'm excited to see this take effect and for folks to see this in their compensation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. And seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1302 and 1303-2023 stands approved.
So the viewing public, this will go into effect January 1st, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yes, okay.
Chief, are you doing municipal finance?
1344?
Yeah, 1344. Come on up, Mr. Preston. And this is 1344 and 1353, right?
It should just be 44.
Definition of financial assistance. Oh, no.
Yeah, it should just be
53 is me. All right, thank you. All right, welcome, Mr. President, Commissioner. This is ordinance number 1344-2023 by Councilmember Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend various sections of Chapter 192 as amended by various ordinances relating to the 2016 municipal income tax and to enact new section 192.591 relating to alternative net profits apportionment for remote employees. Director.
Yes. Chairman and members of council, what you have in front of you is an ordinance that, in essence, brings our municipal income tax code into compliance with the Ohio Revised Code with changes that were made at the General Assembly. And I will give the floor to Mr. Preslin to walk through those changes, but just wanted to provide that context that what you have in front of you is driven by changes at the state level.
Thank you. Yeah, so there are four major changes that, or I shouldn't say major, but four changes that I'm pointing out as it relates to coming in compliance with Ohio Revised Code 718. The first one relates to the net profit return extension date. Currently, that extension date is 6 months after when the return is due. However, the state changed to add an additional month for businesses, so that'll give them 7 months from the original due date, which for most businesses will now be November 15th instead of October 15th, but that can change depending on the structure of the business. The second change is allowable taxpayer correspondence when on extension. This just restricts the type of correspondence we can send out to taxpayers who may or definitely are on extension. Practically speaking, this doesn't really affect us because we do our delinquency work after the extension date anyway. We can still collect upon and reach out to taxpayers for old tax years. We just have to wait officially until the extension deadline to reach out for current tax years. The third change is lowering the maximum late filing penalty on filing a tax return. The current structure is $25 a month. If you're late up to 6 months, that is currently being capped out at $150 a month, the 6 times 25. That penalty is being lowered to a one-time $25 cap per taxpayer per return. It will have a de minimis, probably decrease in overall penalty and interest that we bring in, but it's nothing that we have to be concerned about. And the last change, which is what the additional language in Chapter 192 is related to, is changing the calculation that net profit returns and their income are calculated upon. It has no impact on remote workers and where their money is being withheld and remitted to. It is strictly just looking at the calculation for the net profit return. Basically, it's so that we're not creating an additional nexus or connection to a city that wouldn't already have one if not for the teleworkers. So if there's an office already there, that connection exists. However, if it's just 1 or 2 teleworkers for a company, it's not establishing, a net profit connection to that city just because they have a remote worker, 2, 3, 4. So with that, any further questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. First, I have Councilman Casey, then Councilman Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner, my first question was addressed because I received a number of phone calls regarding the $150 penalty. So some people would only owe $30 in taxes, but they were being penalized $150 for not paying it on time, which leads to my second question, is that who sets the January 15th date, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner, of taxes being due in the city of Cleveland?
Through the council chair to the president or to the councilman, that is in ORC 718, so that's the state.
That's ORC what?
718 is the entire section. I'd have to get back to you on the specific subject.
So even though I think March 15th is tax day, correct?
April.
Or April 15th is tax day. If you don't pay your taxes to the city of Cleveland that you owe by January 15th, you get penalized. Correct?
To the councilman, that is correct for those who don't have withholdings. If you're a W-2 employer like ourselves, that doesn't affect us. There's also a safe harbor rule where basically if you pay the previous amount by that January 15th, you will not be charged that penalty and interest, basically to protect against Schedule C small businesses who might not have an exact knowledge of how much income they have by January 15th, allows them to basically pay what they had to pay last year so that then they aren't penalized, and then you can true up through a refund or additional payments by the deadline.
And then, Mr. Chairman of the Commissioner, the safe harbor amount, how do does your office notify individuals of their safe harbor amount, or is it something that people are just supposed to know?
To the councilman, it is on our forms for the individual and corporate estimates that are on our website. So if you are expected to owe $200 or more, ignoring any withholdings from your employer, you're required to do quarterly estimates. And on that form, there's a calendar, there's a schedule. You owe 25% by April 15th. You owe 50% by, I believe it's June 15th, so on and so forth. So it is on the form and in the instructions, and then obviously if a taxpayer reaches out to us, we also notify them as well.
And then, Mr. Chairman, to the Commissioner, when will this $25 max penalty take effect? Has it already taken effect at the state level?
Through the council chair to the councilman, it will take effect once this is finalized.
I understand, but has it taken effect at the state yet? Has the maximum penalty of $25 passed the state yet?
To the councilman, yes, it was part of the bill that was passed June 30th.
Okay, so according to the state, as of July 1, right, nobody could be fined more than the $25.
To the councilman, for these various sections, they all have different, basically, starting dates. I'd have to look at the actual language. Unfortunately, they made it difficult, so it depends
There's
on
a shock.
when the tax year starts or ends, and they all vary. But we're all operating, as a municipality across the state, as have it in effect by January 1st, and kind of moving forward, that'll be how we.
All right, so if there's somebody out there who accumulated a penalty from July 1st to December 31st of this year, will they be obligated to pay that $150? Or is it the $25?
To the councilman, it'll be technically it'll be the full 150 because we have not passed the legislation to make it in effect.
Starting January 1st going forward, the maximum penalty that the city will incur on somebody who hasn't paid their taxes by January 15th will be $25.
To the councilman, yes, that is correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Mike Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, to the director, to the commissioner. To summarize your presentation, this has very little impact on the city, correct?
That is correct, Councilman.
Okay. But my question is this for individuals. Let's say you were working across the street over here at Jones Day, and then all of a sudden now you can work from home. Who notifies the municipality? Does the individual employee, or does the employer notify the city that the employee is now working from home? How does that happen?
To the councilman, that would be the employer through their withholdings to that city, or the lack of withholdings to the previous city.
So if that individual was lived in the city of Cleveland, they would notify the city of Cleveland.
The employer would.
The employer would?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so if you're working out in a suburb, it would be the same thing. They'd notify the suburb.
Correct.
Okay. So on that, do we have any idea how many individuals we've been notified?
To the councilman, not officially. We monitor it at a high level and by employer level, so we see the trends of certain businesses have have seen withholdings go down as a result of telework. Others have stayed flat, others have gone up. So, but as it relates to a specific number, no, we do not have that.
So we don't know if we're trending down or what, or if we're holding our own as it pertains to income tax from individuals.
Just to clarify, are you referring to income tax in general or remote work?
Remote work.
It's definitely, we do know it from an employer-to-employer basis, and it is stabilizing in the sense that we aren't seeing those decreases that we were seeing 1 or 2, 3 years ago. Plus, it's also just being counteracted by inflation and general wages going up.
Okay.
So,
Because all of us want to see more people, especially coming downtown, back downtown to work in the office buildings. Because if we're going to have other venues, you need to have that critical mass of people in the downtown area specifically. And I look at the Sherwin-Williams building going up, and I say to myself, I wonder how much of that's going to be occupied. I hope it's all going to be occupied because it's a large tower. But at the end of the day, I didn't know from an administrative standpoint, I guess as the finance director as well, are we actually monitoring the actual numbers? I mean, who's looking at the numbers?
Through the chair to the councilman, I think the notice that we get is just through the way the employer withholds. We don't
Okay.
get a notice explicitly that says this person is working remotely and is a resident of your city.
Okay.
So so when we're monitoring the numbers, we're looking at a high level. We know anecdotally and based on evidence what employers have big facilities in the city, which don't, and we can tell. Anecdotally, that some employers that don't have large presences in the city are suddenly remitting relatively significant withholdings of income tax to the city, which suggests to us that even though the office is somewhere else in a suburb, they must have a lot of remote workers living in the city. But that's about the level of detail that we're able to identify.
As we look at the at the revenue going forward, which obviously concerns me. I just didn't know, if we were really drilling down on that number of remote workers that are impacting our bottom line. And so my last question is to both, whoever can answer. Are we hearing anything out of our wonderful, those rascals in Columbus about any efforts to take our income tax or anything along those lines?
To the councilman, nothing official. Everything that we're hearing is it's currently not a top priority.
So no legislation pending to take any?
There's definitely no legislation pending. I can confirm that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Any additional questions on 1344-2023? Hearing none, 1344-2023 is approved. Please sign. Director, am I done with you? Or do you got anything else?
Done. All
right. Okay, we are going to move into ordinance 1250-2023 as amended by council members Plunsick and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Community Relations Board to apply for and accept a grant from the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas Juvenile Court Division to conduct the 2024 Cleveland Youth Diversion Program. Director, good afternoon. How are we doing today? All right. Kick us off on 1250, please.
Sure. To the chair and to the committee, we did appear before the safety committee. This is a grant renewal. We had it for 2 years previously with the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. This particular grant this year is for 1 year for our youth diversion program. And it's for the amount of $44,700.
Okay. Alrighty. And this, where does the source of the funding on this, Director?
I'm going to turn a lot of this over to Sharice Dawson, who runs the program.
Alrighty. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. To the chair, it actually comes from Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court.
Okay, great. And this is a diversion program for young people, I would assume nonviolent offender type. Can you explain just a little bit more about that?
Yes, through the chair to the committee, the Youth Diversion Program is a joint effort between the City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. The program's goal is to divert youth offenders who have committed nonviolent, low-level offenses from the official court process. The Youth Diversion Program addresses the youth's delinquent behaviors and resolves the matter in the community while still holding the youth accountable for their actions.
Thank you so much. Councilwoman Santana on 1250-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to director, if anyone who could answer this, is $44,000 enough for this program? Considering
Director?
To the
youth
councilwoman and
violence.
through the chair to the councilwoman and to the committee, to be honest, no. We did get these questions asked when we were at the table with the safety committee. And the suggestion that we made at the table was when you do meet with Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, make sure that they bring their juvenile division. We don't know how they actually determine this amount of money, seeing that we know that we occupy probably about 70% that goes before that court. So we were a little bit puzzled on this amount this year.
Wow. And have we looked at what other cities are getting in comparison to the city of Cleveland? Do we know those numbers?
To the chair, to the councilwoman, not at this time, we don't know those numbers, but we are starting to explore a lot compared. We were asked at the safety table to prepare a wish list, so we are looking at different cities and how they operate diversion programs and as well as violent intervention.
Safety's on it. Love it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Polonsek, this went to
Yes.
the Safety Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, and to reinforce Councilwoman Santana's question. It is not enough money. I believe, Ms. Dawson, correct me, we have, 3 people working on this?
Through the chair to the councilman, that is correct, myself and 2 others.
Yeah, so that is not nearly enough, and it's just mind-boggling to me in light of the growing juvenile problem in this city and in this county, why we do not have additional resources to apply more folks to deal with this issue. I mean, I think all of us have come to the realization there are some issues over at juvenile court that are not being addressed adequately, and we are constantly scrambling to address this. I can't think of, when we think of priorities, what's a higher priority than trying to get these kids back on the right track in their life? That's a priority here. And for some reason, it's just not. $44,000 from the county to the city for youth diversion it's almost embarrassing. It's embarrassing, quite frankly. And so we've got to do some more due diligence and more drilling down. We've asked the director, and I appreciate her presentation because we know she's diligent for some additional information, so we can start the questioning folks over at the county. Is like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? We need more help. We need to do more street activity with these kids and hope to save more of them. So that's all I can tell you. We're not happy. We support the legislation because it is what it is, but we need more assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Polonsek. Any additional questions on 1250-2023?
Mr. Chair, I have just an additional follow-up question.
Santana.
So on Polensek's point, I'm curious to know through the chair, how much does the city of Cleveland match the county dollars?
This is, I think, the 424 or the
Through the
43rd.
chair to the councilwoman, there isn't a match.
There isn't a match. So is that something that would be on the wish list? Or maybe we're just not asking the county to add more dollars, which I think it's a problem. Like the city's been putting money in a lot of programming where county really needs to step
I think,
up and-
if I may, Mr. Chairman, when we talk about requests, pre-budget requests, I would say to any of my colleagues, add that to your wish list. And also with regard to violence interrupters, we know this department needs more violence interrupters. So I think, again, that should be something that we're asking of the administration going forward. What is your overall game plan dealing with juvenile violence in the city of Cleveland? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any additional questions on 1250-2023?
Mr. Chairman, just one quick question.
Casey?
Mr. Chairman, to the director, how much was the grant in the past? Have they've cut it?
Sure. To the chair and to the committee, we actually got $72,000 for over 2 years.
So it was $36,000 a year, and now it's 44
It's 44
for 1 year.
for 1 year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Hearing no other questions on 1250-2020. All right, Councilman, 1250-2023. No, we got to do all of this.
This program has been going how long?
Through the chair to the councilman since 1999.
And it goes through the chair through community relations. Is that correct?
Through the chair to the councilman, that is correct.
All right. And Did I hear that the county that they're putting funding in with this as well? Did I hear that?
Through the chair to the councilman, the funding is coming from the county. The $44,700, that's all from the county.
Okay. And let me ask this to the director, because she knows how to do it. What I mean doing that is, we could get some dollars from downstate also. You work downstate, and you called me down there to work with you on some projects. This is TANF eligible.
Yeah, to the chair, to the councilman, and to the committee, yes, we are exploring other options and funding and resources downstate as well. But keep in mind, this is just operational programming funding. General fund pays for the salaries of the 3 employees which are in youth diversion that run this day to day.
Through the chair, you know, the operating budget is up now. You reach out, you know how to do it, you reach out to your state reps. You sit down with them, and I would put a wish list, because we don't reach out to them for stuff. And I would put a wish list. You know, even when I was doing the fatherhood movement, you called me down there, put in $620,000 on that fatherhood movement through operating budget. I would sit down with the state reps, that's their job, is to write policy and bring home money. And I would ask them for some dollars already. Because I think in June, that's when the governor started releasing his funding. And we get some operating money there. And Councilmember Mike Polensek, I will reach out to Terrence Upchurch and ask him for some dollars also. Because they could give you more money than the city. We put it in the budget. Through the chair, you know that.
To the chair and to the councilman, you are correct, and we'll also be exploring with our governmental affairs department as well as our lobbyists downstate.
Yeah, that'd be cool beans. And if, I mean, you don't even need my help. You know how to do it. You know the way. Correct? You know,
To the chair, to the councilman, yes, I do know how to go follow the roadmap to that, yes.
I would see the director when I would go downstate and looking for dollars, and you were there in the departments, the whole 9 yards, and you know which way the money flows. So I'll get on some of the operating budget, get those dollars. I would grab Brewery also for your ward. That's what I would do. Got to make them work.
All right, thank you. No other questions? Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Captain Holmes. Ordinance number 1251-2023 by Councilmembers Polensek and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety to apply for and accept a grant from the Ohio Department of Public Safety for fiscal year 2024 impaired driving enforcement program and selective traffic enforcement program, better known as the IDEP STEP program. And we have Mrs. Hartsong and Captain Holmes with us, so please proceed.
To the chair.
Commissioner, all right, we'll get the title right eventually. All right, go ahead, Ms. Hartsong.
Sure. To the chair. So this grant is something that the city of Cleveland has received since 2008. It's funding from the state of Ohio to provide traffic enforcement, and this is specifically for traffic blitz. So this is going to specific areas that have had a lot of accidents related to, for instance, to alcohol or to speed, and setting up a number of officers there to randomly pull people over and check them for impaired driving and seat belts and stuff like that. So we get this money every year from the state of Ohio. It reimburses us for overtime for the officers that are running those traffic blitz programs. Last year, the grant that just ended, the results were 22 driving under suspension arrests, 2 OVI arrests, 35 speed citations, 47 adult restraint citations, 13 no operator's license citations, and 132 other citations. So the total grant is $69,869.36. Again, the majority of that goes for police overtime. There's $3,500 available for education, which is things like posters and flyers, to tell people don't drink and drive. And then $2,634 for to reimburse us for fuel for these programs.
Okay. Captain Holmes, Commissioner, did you want to add anything?
No, I mean, basically, she said that we do deploy people in all the districts through various parts of the year. Halloween grants, homecoming grants, and things like that. And we usually go where there's high accidents, like she said, and crime and things like that. So that's how we deploy.
Okay. Well, we know that traffic enforcement is critically important, and I'm going to turn it over to the Dean if he has any comments. I know this was heard in public safety.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, honorable colleagues, and to the Dawn and to the Commissioner, we discussed this at length. Obviously, council members are greatly concerned about traffic enforcement. The Commissioner indicated that he's operating with, 23 now?
It's 23, but that was including the supervisor. We have 18.
Okay.
And we do, I just want to be clear, we do reach out to the districts
Yes,
and
I
allow
understand.
their traffic cars to do this as well.
And we did have up to 39 in the unit, so we all know that there's been a tremendous drop, and it's a great concern. Council members want traffic enforcement in the neighborhood, and I am hoping, I've been, because I know the council president's been very supportive of this. We had the Highway Patrol up here helping, and now they're gone. And no one can give me an answer why they're gone, why they have pulled out. We had Operation Surge going on, and the governor told both the council president and myself that they would be here as long as they were needed, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Commissioner, do you have an idea why they're gone?
I think right now, in the summer, we utilize them in the traffic. We did a blitz in every
Right, we know
district. I think right now, they're probably as short as we are, so that with the Cleveland Post, so that probably has something to do with it. So I think we're ramping up and looking at other details with narcotics and things like that, and we're going to bring them.
Well, Mr. Chairman, and to the Commissioner, anything you can do to ramp up traffic in our neighborhoods would be greatly appreciated, because it's a major concern. Thank you. I support the legislation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. And seeing no other questions, I want to mention that ordinance number 1250 and 1251-2003 stands approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.
Thank you. We're going to go to Port and then end up with Capital. That's ordinance 1251. Director's not here with us today?
No, sir.
All right. Ordinance number 1185-2023 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend section 1 of ordinance number 660-2023 passed June 5th, 2023 relating to a lease agreement with Unify Aviation LLC for the lease space at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport to support ground handling services for Aer Lingus. Director?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we are here to present a piece. Unify Aviation, they are a baggage handling service that provides service to Aer Lingus, our new international carrier flying to Dublin, Ireland. And so what they do is they support them in all the baggage handling efforts. To this point, they have been operating, but they're looking to increase their presence a bit by adding a baggage service office down in the baggage claim level, just an added amenity that will be better customer service for any of those passengers utilizing that Aer Lingus service. And so they've come to us requesting a lease space for 318 square feet and seeking approval to enter into that lease agreement with them.
Thank you so much. Councilman McCormick, you relieved us from authority.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as Councilman Slife and I met and discussed these pieces that you were going to hear momentarily, these are all general lease and other kind of controversial, for lack of a better term, pieces. And we agreed in order to get them done by the 4th that we would relieve them and hear them here in finance. So we support this ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1185-2023 stands approved. Next is ordinance number 1191-2023 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into an amendment to contract number PS 2020-27 with ACOM Technical Services, Inc. to extend the term of the contract up to 2 years to provide additional services. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we're seeking to amend this contract. AECom has been a consultant. We've been utilizing their services for the last few years to implement our asset management program. Historically, we have not had a robust asset management program at airport to track all the various assets we have. It's kind of been more of a manual process. And so a few years ago, we brought on AECom as a technical consultant to implement softwares and processes and standards and protocols to assure that we are timely maintaining all of our assets and repairing them at critical points and replacing them when needed. And so we have been working with them. They have been providing good service for us for the last few years. We're requesting to extend their contract for up to 2 more years to kind of finish out the work that we've started with them and really finalize the implementation of our asset management program.
Thank you. Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, reviewed by myself and Councilman Slife. We support this legislation. Also important to note that their local office is in the city of Cleveland, too, which is always a good thing to see.
Awesome. All right, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1191-2023 stands approved. Please sign on. Ordinance number 1258-2023 by Councilmembers McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance determining the method of making the public improvement of designing and constructing various types of structures at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into 1 or more contracts for the making of the improvement. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, so we have several aging facilities at Cleveland Hopkins that house various airline and airport support functions, fueling operations, ground service equipment maintenance facilities, de-icing maintenance facilities. All of these are very aged facilities, and we are looking to put up some, for lack of a better word, some temporary structures. These structures we're looking at, they're not really temporary, but for lack of a better word, we'll call it that. More like, steel erected structures with pre-tension fabric that can easily and quickly, efficiently be constructed, and then when time is needed, we can then relocate these for different purposes. And so we are proposing to put up these structures to house some of these facilities that are currently operating in aged infrastructure, and then we'll have the flexibility as we move towards our terminal modernization development program to reutilize these facilities for different purposes and relocate them as needed. I do also want to note that on the calendar, it lists this piece as estimated cost of $3 million. The actual estimated cost is $5 million, which is noted in the executive summary and in the ordinance itself. Just wanted to make that note. It's properly reflected in the executive summary and the ordinance. And for this, we request approval to move forward. We will also competitively procure this project.
So just to make sure, the attorney, because there are different numbers in the administrative report, but the 5,000 number is in the legislation, do we need to do anything? Here's the administrative report.
Ordinance that's binding.
Okay.
Administrative report is not in the file.
So we're good then if the ordinance binding. Okay, all right. Councilman McCormick?
We support this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1258-2023 stands approved. Please sign on. Next up is ordinance number 1274-2023 by council members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to exercise the option to renew contract number LS 2019 through 015 with Alclear LLC, DBA Clear, to continue the operation and maintenance of up to 15 kiosks located at security checkpoints and for administrative support space at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, seeking approval to exercise this option with this particular vendor. Back in 2019, we entered into this agreement. It's a service provided. If you've seen it as you go through the checkpoints, you can sign up for the Clear service. And what it is it's an expediting through the security checkpoint lines. They do background checks, and then they they actually kind of move you through the line to the front of the line if you're part of this program. We implemented back in 2019. It has been a successful program, a lot of good reception to it, customer service-wise, and so we are looking to continue our relationship with this company and continue this service for our passengers.
Yeah, TSA PreCheck is almost like flying coach now because everybody goes through clear now. So, okay. All right. Ordinance number, do we have any other questions, Councilman McCormick? On
Mr. President, we support 1274.
All right. 1274 is approved. Please sign on. Ordinance number 1275-2023 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into one or more contracts with Airports Council International for professional services necessary to provide customer service satisfaction surveys, data collection, reporting, and benchmarking and similar services for a period of 1 year, with 3 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director of Port Control. Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, so we are proposing to enter into this agreement with Airports Council International. They are a very well-renowned, very large international industry organization in the aviation industry. We work with them a lot. We have a good relationship with them, and they are, very well known in the industry. And so what they provide a service to do surveys of customers on their experience as they traverse our facilities. We did previously have an agreement with them for this very same service back pre-pandemic. When the pandemic hit, we stopped the service and then ended the relationship with them. But we've gotten to a point now where we'd like to resume this relationship with them and pick back up this service. And what it does is they survey customers as they're traversing the facilities and get real-time information from them on their experience and what they liked, what they didn't like, and all that. And then we, on a regular basis, are getting a pipeline of customer service data that we have customer service data, but this is an ongoing, regular use data pipeline that will allow us to make decisions in the short term and also make decisions in the longer term as we begin design and implementation of the Terminal Modernization Development Program. So seeking approval to enter into this agreement with them for this service.
All right, thank you, Councilman McCormick.
Mr. Chairman, we support this legislation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1275-2023 stands approved. Please sign on. And last but not least is ordinance number 1276-2023 by Council Members McCormick and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Port Control to enter into one or more contracts with J.D. Power for professional service necessary to participate in and have access to the JDP North American Airport Satisfaction Study and similar services for a period of 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew exercisable by the Director of Port Control.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is a very similar service to the one that we just talked about, but J.D. Power is, again, a very well-known, well-respected survey organization in the country that does surveys on lots of different things, and so we are requesting to enter an agreement with them to collect data, again, on similar customer experience as our passengers traverse the facilities. They ask different questions than the ASQ, and they ask the questions in different ways, online and different things. So we're making sure by having both of these services that we are catching as many different data points as we can in customers and catching them in many different ways by having these two services. So we'd like to enter into this agreement with them. And again, just another way to gather data, collect this information so we can make informed decisions on customer improvements in our facilities. And for this, we request approval.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilman McCormick?
Mr. Chairman, we support 1276-2023.
Okay, seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1276-2023 stands approved.
Thank you.
We're going to municipal service. And the first one that we have for municipal service is Ordinance number 1256-2023 by council members Bishop and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend sections 185.01 and 185.08 of codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, as amended by various ordinances to repeal section 185.02, advertisement for bids, and to supplement the codified ordinances by enacting new sections 185.011 and 185.012 and 185.02 relating to construction contracting. Directors.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. So to my right, I have Carter Edmond, and to my left is Robert Chappelle. He's the Section Chief of Design for Capital Projects. And so this ordinance relates to construction reform. We had a robust discussion this morning about it and the importance to contracting here in the city of Cleveland. I'm going to hand it over to Carter to kick off the discussion.
Thank you, Director. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about what I think is a very important piece of legislation to modernize the contracting process for capital projects in the city. Director DeRosa mentioned the term construction reform, which is a common term we're using for this legislation. And the reason for that is it helps bring the city into alignment with Ohio construction reform, which was passed in 2011, which enabled public entities to take advantage of a variety of contracting methods. Many other municipalities and public entities have done that. I know some of you are very familiar with this topic and this piece of legislation specifically, and some maybe less so. I'll try to be concise, but I'd like to kind of go through what this is about and how it works. I apologize if some of this may seem elementary, but I do want to kind of go through it, the whole thing. Basically, I want to address 5 questions here. What are we talking about? What will this allow? How will it benefit the city? How will it work? And just as importantly, what will not change? So what we're talking about is the type or form of contract that's used for construction and capital projects. There are a lot of different types of contracts out there that owners, architecture and design teams, and contractors use to design and execute construction. We're going to be talking about the 3 sort of most common that are commonly used in public entities and that are addressed in this legislation. Those include the traditional design bid build method, which we're all familiar with, in which the city does the vast majority of its work as design bid build. In design bid build, it's exactly what it says. You engage a design team, and when I say design team throughout this discussion, that would be the architects, landscape architects, and engineers that are needed to execute a design of a project. That may be done in-house, it may be a consulting design team, or it may be a combination. But in any case, you get a design team together, you complete the entire design of the entire project, you estimate what it's going to cost, you put it out to bid. In our case, that would be through the Division of Purchases and Supplies. Bids come back, and typically you accept the lowest bid that's not somehow disqualified. That's the traditional design bid build method, and there are projects that that's very appropriate for, and I'll talk about that a little bit. The second method that this would enable and that I'll talk about is design build. And contractually what that means is instead of hiring a design team and then completing the design, you hire a single entity that has a single contract that does the design and the procurement and the construction. So what you would do as an owner, what the city would do is compile a set of criteria documents that define the scope, quality, goals, et cetera, of the project, whatever those goals may be, put that out as an RFP or RFQ, and do a qualifications-based selection of a design build team. So that's number 2. The third method that I'm going to talk about is construction manager, and there's a lot of different types of construction manager contracts. What I'm talking about this evening when I say CM or construction manager is construction manager at risk. And that means a construction manager who holds the construction subcontracts and executes the construction. Typically, in a construction manager contract, you start the design with the design team. Somewhere around 25% of the design, you engage the construction manager. They bring on board certain key subcontractors. They provide design assist. They provide cost estimating. They may do pre-purchasing of some long lead time items. And they provide one or more guaranteed maximum prices, or GMPs, throughout the course of the project that you sign off on and continue into construction with the same team that was working on it before. So those are very brief outlines of the design, bid, build, and CM processes. Currently, in theory, we have the ability, the authority to do any of those. That's described in Section 176 of the Charter, or excuse me, 167. I keep making that mistake. 167 of the Charter. And it does mention design, bid, build, whether a gross price or a unit price. It talks about a guaranteed maximum price, although it doesn't mention CM, so it's a little ambiguous there. And it does mention engineer, procure, construct, which is a bit of an old-fashioned term for design, build. So in theory, it's kind of all in there, but the language is very confusing. It's open to a lot of interpretation, and currently we need to, after we've approved all of our capital plan projects for the year, we need to come back for legislative authority for projects we've already presented if the contracting process is going to differ from the traditional design, bid, build. So that's kind of the current state of affairs. What this would allow, so this legislation is clarifying and expanding codified ordinance section 185, which describes the process of advertising, procuring, and contracting for capital projects. This would allow the contracting department, together with the Board of Control, to align the right form of contract with the right project. Each one, there's no perfect delivery method, in spite of what some people who may have an interest in one or the other might tell you, but there is the appropriate delivery method for the appropriate project. So for example, a highly complex project, let's say we were going to do a full renovation of 2001 paint, or a construction manager, fast track construction, if you're looking at getting early packages out, that would lean towards CMR. For design build, it would be something where you have really discrete known goals for the project. You have to be able to create those criteria documents. As you may recall, this year we did the Glenville Salt Dome that came through here as a design build project. That's something that's a very well-known scope. Similarly, the Second Police District boiler and mechanical systems, very good design build projects. Design build can also be a very expeditious way to get through a project if that's a particular priority. And just to be clear, design, bid, build is also a really important tool in the toolkit. That might be appropriate where we're doing design in-house. We would certainly do that as design, bid, build. Something where we want close aesthetic control over a lot of the details, but it's not so complex that it warrants bringing a CM on board. Office renovations would be a good example. Rec center renovations might be a good example. So I think there's a place for all of these, and the idea is to be able to align these with the best contracting method with the project. What's really important here is how will this benefit the city? There's a couple of ways. One is these delivery methods, design, build, and construction manager, allow you to use a best value qualifications-based selection method. So we're not just asking for a price, we're asking for a price and proof that you can do the work, proof that you have the qualifications. Some of the work that, particularly that the city does, involves highly specialized work. A good example I'm thinking of is City Hall facades. That is highly technical masonry work. Part of it is also restoring the bronze doors. You can imagine that's also very highly specialized work. Not the kind of thing that you want to necessarily go to the lowest bidder when you don't know who's going to be subcontracting doing the actual work. That's one. Another advantage of some of these delivery methods is open book pricing. And what that means is I mentioned that with the CM or the design build team, we would be developing pricing with that team as we're developing the design. And it's all open book. That means we get to see the subcontractor costs, we get to see what's making up the price so that we can evaluate it, as opposed to when we get a bid in from design, bid, build, it's just a number. I mean, they have OEO schedules and stuff with it, but really we don't know how that number is built. So if one of the bids is an outlier, say 3 or 4 of them are grouped pretty close, but one is low, We don't know if they're missing something or made some assumptions, or maybe they're just much more efficient. There's no way to tell. There's no way to scrutinize that. But with a GMP process, you don't have that outlier confusion because it's open book. The GMP process, whether it's through design, build, or construction manager, also allows the owner, the city in this case, to write in incentives for collaborative cost savings, for time incentives, whatever the goals of that project are, you can write that in to provide those incentives. A big incentive that we know we'll look at going forward is community benefits. Currently, with the design, bid, build process, when we get the bids in, we get their OEO schedules. And basically, you made the minimum criteria or you didn't. And it's a punitively based system. With design build or CMR, we're actually building the team with them. We start with the proposal with the leadership team. They start to bring in subcontractors. We can work with them to help identify minority subcontractors or City of Cleveland subcontractors to give those people opportunities. And it may be contractors that the CM wasn't even aware of, right? But OEO might know about, who are ready for that opportunity. So as opposed to just you win or you lose based on the documents you put in, we're actually building a team. So it's working toward a collaborative compliance instead of a punitive system. Another advantage to the city is broader contractor participation. Now, obviously, the context I just mentioned, we can help build the team. But even more so, a lot of the best contractors, frankly, they're not interested in low bid environment, right? Really good, we do work with some good contractors, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the best and most qualified contractors are not interested in a race to the bottom to be the lowest bidder because they know somebody's going to underbid them. So that's, and we're really, in that sense, for complex projects, we're kind of out of step with the current best practices in the industry. And then finally, you have the sole source of responsibility. When you have the design build contract, that's a contract for a project. They're responsible for everything. So you don't have the architect versus the engineer versus the contractor. Like I said, all of these different methods, I think, have their appropriate place. Here's how this contracting would work. So design, bid, build, we know how that works. We do that all the time. It goes through purchasing and comes back and gets ratified by Board of Control. The design, build, or CM would go out as an RFP or RFQ. There may be a couple stages of selection there. If it's an RFQ, this second stage may be requesting fees from a subset of that or doing interviews, scope review. Again, all things we can't do with design, bid, build. Then that would all go through OEO, CRC, and Board of Control. And Board of Control, who currently, I don't know if ratifies is technically the right word, but ratifies the contractor, would also, in the course of that, ratify the type of contract that we're using. Yeah, so we'll go through the OEO, CRC, Board of Control process. And I also want to clarify what's not changing here. One thing is all contracts will continue to be competitively awarded. The competitive criteria in the design bid build, it'll still be the bid. In the other methods, we will lay out in the RFP what those criteria are, score those. It's all transparent and all auditable. So it is competitive no matter which way we go. Council will still authorize all capital spending. Just as always, you will see the capital plan, you will see the annual plan. If I'm going on too long.
Yeah, and I do want to do this if I could, because when is your last meeting, your last day?
Mr. Chairman, he's technically gone. He's on vacation, but he's technically gone. So this is our last chance with Mr.
Okay.
Evans. Yeah,
Reason
he was
why,
kind enough to come in.
and I first of all wanted to commend him for his work, and he's always been a A1 professional, so I always appreciate.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
Going to the private sector to make real money, but here's what I do want to do, and I apologize. Because we had so many partners that really helped us, and our attorneys were trying to work out some language issues with your attorneys with the law department. I want to hold this until next week because I really want to pass this. This is actually one of the pieces that council really pushed for, and we are happy that you explained it the way that you did. We have a subject matter expert that really spent a lot of time helping us put this together named Jeff Applebaum, and he was not available to get here today. But I do plan on bringing him here next Monday, and I didn't know that this was going to creep up on me so fast. But I wanted to at least thank Carter and tell you that we do plan on looking at this, but we do want our attorneys to talk to the law department because there's some language issues, the workout that we asked them to look into, and then we do want to bring in Mr. Applebaum because he was very instrumental in helping us, guiding us through this process too. So my apologies. I was hoping this would be Carter's crowning achievement on the way out the door, but I'm going to give him his flowers anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will say next week I won't be available because I'll be in my new position, but I know Jeff Applebaum pretty well, and nobody knows this better than him. His advice will be very valuable.
Thank you so much. That's the reason why I want to bring him in and make sure we're clear. But once again, thank you for your service and wish you all the best. I think we'll probably see a lot of you, at least I will, because the company you work with is doing a big project in my neighborhood, so I know that I'll see a lot of you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. We're going to hold this until next week and then hear this next week with 1256, okay? And then that way all that will be cleared up, okay? Ordinance number 1269-2023 by council members Hairston, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into one or more agreements with the City of East Cleveland regarding the public improvement of resurfacing Woodworth Avenue between Hayden Avenue to Coit Road to, among other items, allow East Cleveland to make the public improvement of resurfacing the portions of Woodworth Avenue which are located in the City of Cleveland, and to cause payment to the City of East Cleveland for the city's portion of the improvement. Director?
Mr. Chairman, so Woodworth Avenue is a road that's split down the center line between Cleveland and East Cleveland. Ward 10 is to the north and East Cleveland is to the south. And this project is a county-funded 50-50 program that would resurface between Hayden Avenue and Coit Road. The other two ends of Woodworth Avenue are in better condition, so this project is focused on that area. The city's portion of this project would be basically a fourth of the cost. Total project costs are $491,272. Cuyahoga County is going to put in half of that, $213,597. And then the city and the City of Cleveland and the City of East Cleveland are both going to put in $138,838. So this would allow the project to move forward. It gives consent to East Cleveland to do work on the City of Cleveland roadway, and it would be a typical roadway project, including the roadway surface that would be undertaken by this project. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Councilman Bishop, this went to Municipal Properties and Services.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we fully vetted this for passage.
Thank you, sir. Any additional questions on 1269, 2023?
Wait. I do
Councilman,
have a question.
are you requesting a question, Councilman Conway?
I am.
All righty, Councilman, you're up.
Wait a minute. East Cleveland putting some money in through the chair? And wait a minute. Just go back and reflect. And the roadway is going to be where again? In East Cleveland?
Excuse me? What is the question?
Narrate that again to me, what you mentioned about East Cleveland. And how much money they're putting in, and are they going to champion the project as well?
Through the chairman and the councilman, not sure exactly your question, but this is a City of East Cleveland project. They came to the City of Cleveland to see if we wanted to participate in this project. So it's a county project, which is a 50-50 project, which means that the county puts in half. And since the City of Cleveland owns half of the street and the City of East Cleveland owns the other half of the street, we each put in a fourth of the cost of the project.
And the project is located where again?
This is Woodworth Avenue. It's between Hayden and Coit.
Yeah, that's an ugly street. Let me ask you this other question. I came to you with that idea, was it Bunny, to try to
East
get down.
125th Street.
Right. They said they had no money. So I need to pay them a visit. They'll see me knocking on their door tomorrow. I mean, I want the project to go through. I look at the entire city. But they told me they had no money. And they're putting, and say again, they're putting how much dollars?
Through the chairman and the councilman, so on your tablet, it'll show $138,838.
All right, we'll take
And
care
so, through the chairman and the councilman, the city of East Cleveland came to us with this project. We have discussed with them the dire need to do East 125th Street.
Right.
But at this time, the city of East Cleveland said that they don't have the funds to do that particular street. It might be because that's a much, much longer street. This particular street, if you look at it, this is a pretty small stretch that is between Hayden and Coit.
Yeah, I can see 125th Street taking up, my assumption, about maybe $250,000, something like that.
Through the chairman and the councilman, we do have cost estimates for 125th Street that we presented to East Cleveland, and Assistant Director Chambers has had many discussions with East Cleveland in particular about that street. And the cost is much more than this. I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this to the table. I'm going to vote for it. I mean, we need it. Got to take care of the entire city, but
I don't know. Is it a county route, 125th Street?
no. So the county put the funding up. Did I hear that correctly?
So through the chairman and the councilman, Mr. Chappelle made a good point. The East 125th Street is not a county route. So to qualify for the 50/50 program, it has to be a county route.
All right, we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
I'll talk with a certain person, and then I'll go and talk with the mayor, and then I'll call you up. You know how we work it.
Through the chairman and the councilman, yeah, we'll keep working on East 125th Street. It's important to us too, but we can't pay for the improvements in their city, so we need their cooperation on it.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there 100%. If it's not in my ward, I'm a Cleveland City Councilman. But you just told me something, so I know the players to talk with, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goodbye.
All right, thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1269-2023 stands approved. Next up is ordinance number 1338-2023 by Councilmember Starr, McCormick, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to apply to the District 1 Public Works Integrating Committee for state funding for constructing improvements to portions of Carnegie from Ontario to East 55th. Phase 3, to apply for and accept any gifts or grants from any public or private entity, determining the method of making the public improvement, authorizing the director to enter into one or more contracts to construct and implement the improvement, authorizing the commissioner of purchases and supplies to acquire, accept, and record real property and easements that are necessary for the improvement, and authorizing other agreements. Director.
Mr. Chairman, so this is legislation that you've seen before to authorize us to pursue Issue 1 funding from the state of Ohio, which is a great opportunity when it has high traffic volumes, and also when there happens to be a public utility improvement project that could be coupled with it. So this particular project would be between East 9th and East 55th Street. I will say, though, that we may choose to split this into phases because this particular project, as with that length, is 1.7 miles, and it would be at about an $11 million project. We are seeking, if we did the whole thing, it would be about $5.5 million of Issue 1 funds. That would be about our whole allocation for the year. So typically, we would split with another project and seek 2 projects to be funded in the year. You'll see on your tablet there's $500,000 listed for public utilities. That's because a portion of this road needs a new water line, just a little portion of it though. And then we would need about $5 million of future road and bridge bonds, which wouldn't be sold until a future year. And again, that would come back before council. So this would allow us to apply for the Issue 1 funds, enter into design contracts, and then if the funds are awarded, allow us to move forward with the project.
All right, Councilman Bishop.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we fully vetted this piece of legislation this morning, MSP. We fully recommend it for passage.
All right, and I know that Councilman Starr is aware of this, has several conversations about this. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1338-2023 stands approved. We have two more pieces. One is ordinance number 1343-2023 as amended by Council members McCormick, Bishop, and Griffin by departmental request. An emergency ordinance authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to apply for and accept funding to implement the Bedrock Development Project, aka Cleveland Riverfront Master Plan, determining the method of making the public improvement, authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into one or more contracts to construct and implement the improvement, authorizing the Commissioner of Purchases and Supplies to acquire, accept, and record real property and easements that are necessary for the improvement, and authorizing other agreements. Director.
Mr. Chairman, so this is a legislation that pairs with the master plan that's been approved by Cleveland City Planning, as well as the development agreement that came through City Council recently. It's for the Bedrock Development Project, which is called the Cuyahoga Riverfront Master Plan, as it's moved through these public bodies. And Bedrock is intending to go into construction on Phase 1A in the springtime. And this ordinance is needed because not only does it allow us to apply for and accept any gifts, grants, loans, and other funding sources for the project, which for this large of a project is absolutely something we'll have to go after. But it also includes accepting from them the gift of the public improvement. So as they do work in the public right-of-way on their own dollar, it allows us to accept the gift of the public improvement. It also allows us to enter into contracts with consultants for public service, for professional services. So if we need to do a design for a portion of the project that we would be undertaking, then that would allow us to do that as well. Portions of these projects, like Canal Road, is planned for future years in NOACA's TIP. So some of these roadways like Eagle Avenue, West 3rd Street would be part of their 1A project. Other portions like Canal Road are a little bit further down the road. But to give them a comfort level that we're ready to move forward with seeking grants and gifts, this is the type of ordinance that we need to pass to be able to move forward with their project at the speed that they're looking to move.
Okay. Councilman Bishop?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we recommend this one for passage.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1343-2023 stands approved. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And we have one more councilmatic piece by Councilmember Griffin, an emergency ordinance to amend section 190A.01 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, 1976, as enacted by ordinance number 297.2023, passed June 5th, 2023, relating to the definition of city financial assistance. And in essence, just to go over what this is that the administration is looking at creating a new municipal job credit and retention income tax credit grant program. And we want to make sure that the CBA and the Community Benefits Agreement and ordinance will apply to the new financial tool that they are actually trying to do. So that's what this ordinance does. It just brings us into compliance with the new financial tool that the administration is trying to put in place so that we can keep pace and make sure that there's a CBA attached to even the new financial tool that they have. Are there any other questions regarding ordinance number 1353.2023? Yes.
Council President, can you explain a little more about the new tool, or just repeat the name of it, will it come up as a separate piece of legislation?
So what the administration is looking at trying to do, and it probably will come up in another piece of legislation, is they're trying to add another tool called the Municipal Job Creation and Retention Income Tax Credit granted under Section 192. So what this would do is pretty much tie job creation and your income taxes to, as another tool for financial incentives for businesses to do. And what we want to do is make sure that if they do this, that CBAs will still apply. That's what this ordinance was saying do. Okay? All right, so seeing no other questions, ordinance number 1353-2023 by Councilmember Griffin stands approved. And that does it for this Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. One more meeting. Yeah. That was relieved DPS.
Yeah, that's the.
Yes, sir.
You know, the loan agreement ordinance we had earlier, where the director of community development would come back after 2 years to it's an execution of the contract. Because we have multiple loan agreements.
So when should it?
So we're just gonna make it on passage of this.
That's fine.
Is that fine?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's cool. Oh, you need something? Oh, yes, sorry. This Committee of Finance, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is adjourned till next week, next call of the chair. Thank you.